Hua Qingxi did not move, and Yang Kai did not counterattack, just standing there and waiting. It was only after a while that Hua Qingxi sighed and looked up, towards Yang Kai. She still had cards to play, and she had only used half of her strength in that attack just now. It was just a test, and she knew in her heart that Yang Kai hadn't used his full strength. Even if she could try her best to defeat this man as he is right now, how could she beat him in his demonized form? Last time, she was subdued by this demon in a single move. This scene was still fresh in her mind and made Hua Qingxi shudder whenever she thought of it. Naturally, it was the type of absolute strength that crushes her, without a single way to resist. Therefore, Hua Qingxi had no desire to carry on. The other party was a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Yet he was calm and relaxed in the face of her attacks. This was enough to illustrate how powerful and how heaven-defying his aptitude was. Furthermore, he was proficient in the Tao of space and had an Emperor artifact like the Sealed World bead in his hand. "Have you resigned to your fate?" Yang Kai smiled faintly after reading the haziness in her eyes. Hua Qingxi pursed her red lips and did not say a word. "There is no need to show such a condescending expression. It makes me feel like I'm evil." Yang Kai laughed and continued. "You can be assured that in a few years, you will look back on today, knowing the wise decision you've made. If you miss this opportunity, I will never take you in even if you cry out to join me in the future." "Shameless boasting. That's the only thing you are first class at," Hua Qingxi replied. "Let's just wait and see." Yang Kai smiled. "Come, don't waste time. I still have work to do. Just be obedient and offer your soul imprint." Hua Qingxi sighed, sat down cross-legged, closed her beautiful eyes, and silently started manipulating her divine senses. Seeing her in position, Yang Kai's expression became solemn as he floated down. When he landed, he was just a few steps in front of her. A short while later, Hua Qingxi's body suddenly trembled and her features turned grim, as if she was suffering from a great deal of pain. Her soul imprint suddenly burst out from within her knowledge sea and shot straight towards Yang Kai. Sensing this, Yang Kai hastily opened her knowledge sea defenses to receive it. He closed his eyes and a soul avatar manifested in his knowledge sea. What he found there was an unfamiliar soul fluctuation inside his knowledge sea, which lingered in the shape of a brand, hovering quietly in midair. Contained within this brand was Hua Qingxi's soul. Yang Kai's soul avatar formed different shapes. Following each of his moves, his knowledge sea tumbled. It gathered into a huge wave, which opened its mouth and devoured the brand like a ferocious beast. Deeper underground, Hua Qingxi suddenly shivered. She opened her beautiful eyes and found Yang Kai looking at her with a smile on his face. So she asked, "What are you looking at?" Yang Kai said, "You have quite the temper." "Humph." Hua Qingxi coldly snorted with discontent and spoke with an uncomfortable face. "It feels weird." It was the first time she offered her soul imprint to someone, and although doing this had little to no effect on her, there was still a subconscious feeling of discomfort. It was as if something precious to her had been taken away. "You just need to get used to it. Now that we are considered a group, then we are no longer outsiders. I do hope we can get along well in the future. Don't think for a second that saying that makes me have a better impression of you. I'm just being oppressed and enslaved by you." Hua Qingxi coldly snapped. "Think what you like." Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders. "I was just going to ask." Hua Qingxi digressed and looked around. "What is this place? Why is it covered in a spirit chi sea? Seems like you are aware of spirit chi seas." Yang Kai smiled faintly. Although it is rare to encounter a spirit chi sea, there are still some in Star Boundary. There is one located in my Star Soul Palace. Hua Qingxi gave Yang Kai a contemptuous look. "We are in the Four Seasons realm." Hua Qingxi was stunned, then called out in alarm. "Huh? Did you just say Four Seasons realm?" "Of course." Hua Qingxi frowned, but soon, as if she thought of something, she concluded, "Yes, by this date, the Four Seasons realm should indeed be open. But how is it that you managed to gain the qualification to enter this place? If I remember correctly, Maplewood City didn't have a spot. I was lucky with the opportunity. I came in with the Azure Sun Temple. Yang Kai replied, why would someone from Azure Sun Temple bring you in? Hua Qingxi got more puzzled. Every single slot is extremely valuable. I don't really want to go into too much detail. Anyways, just know that I took one of their spots. Yang Kai waved his hand. Stole. Hua Qingxi's expression seemed to have turned strange. While they were talking, a fork appeared. Yang Kai signaled them to stop. Let's split up. The chances of precious treasures being born here are pretty good. It would be a pity to miss them. Then let me say this first. If I find... Hua Qingxi was quick to adapt. After the initial state of depression, she was now able to bargain with Yang Kai. It's yours. I won't steal it from you. Yang Kai readily replied. Those were the words I was waiting for. Hua Qingxi smiled and took the left fork. 2 days. In 2 days, we come back and meet here. Yang Kai shouted as she moved even deeper, unsure if she heard him. But that did not matter. After all, now that he had control of Hua Qingxi's soul imprint, Yang Kai could sense her location as long as they were not too far apart. Soon, she was completely out of sight and Yang Kai took a step into the right fork. This was far from where Zhang Ruoxi was located, but the world energy here was still condensed to the point it became foggy. However, it was clearing up at a considerable rate thanks to the sealed world bead. A place that produces a spirit qi has a high probability of producing precious treasures. Yang Kai had only recently entered the right fork when he found a vampire orchid growing on the stone wall. Although this spirit grass was only at Dao source grade mid-rank grade, it was still an extremely rare spirit grass. It could be used as the main ingredient to refining many different types of spirit pills, so it was worth quite a lot. Yang Kai carefully harvested them and placed them into a jade box. This was to preserve them, ready to transplant them to the medicine garden of Small Sealed World when he returned. This was the only way the medicinal properties of the vampire orchid could be preserved. Once he planted them into his medicine garden, there was a good chance the efficacies of the orchid would improve. Over the next few hours, he made a lot of more discoveries. With how abundant the world energy was, there were many rare spirit grass ready to be harvested. This was essentially a treasure trove for an alchemist like Yang Kai. In such a short time, he managed to obtain 7 or 8 different types of herbs, each of different grades, which could be considered a bountiful harvest. However, he felt a tinge of disappointment as he had not found any precious spirit grasses of the Emperor grade, only Dao source grade. Dao source grade and Emperor grade spirit grasses were only 1 grade apart, but their potency was worlds apart. Each Emperor grade spirit grass contained world principles. Even if consumed directly, it allowed cultivators to understand the power of principles, which made it extremely useful for cultivators. The canyons seemed to be endless. Yang Kai was not in a rush because he was prioritizing his search for treasures, but after a few hours of travel, which was a few hundred kilometers, there was still no end in sight. Just when he was ready to continue to go deeper, he felt a sudden wave of uneasiness. His heart raced without knowing why. He frowned, looked back in the direction from whence he came, and the next moment, his face changed. He let out a low bellow. "You are courting death." After his words fell, he summoned out his ship artifact. He went inside and quickly sped back. At the same time, somewhere inside the canyon, Zhang Ruoxi sat cross-legged as the world energy around her constantly rushed into her body, her qi increasing at a rapid pace. She was previously only a second-order Saint King, but during this very short period, she had managed to become third-order Saint King, and there was no sign of stopping. Her strength would continue to climb, and would soon approach the threshold of Origin Returning Realm. Not far from her, Lu Yen was holding the sealed world bead as she looked ahead with a cold expression. Several tens of meters away, 3 men were standing. They were all dressed similarly. Those that knew of the different Southern Territory sects could tell by the pattern on their vest that these 3 were from a sect called Evil Moon Valley. Evil Moon Valley and Blue Feather sect were similar. Both could be considered to be great forces within the Southern Territory. So, when the Four Seasons realm opened, these sects had also got 3 slots. These 3 were selected to enter Four Seasons realm, and they happened to land near the canyon. Among the 3, there was an elderly man and two middle-aged men. The elderly man was in the third-order Dao source realm, while the two were in the second-order Dao source realm. They had no intention to explore the canyon. After all, from above, the canyon seemed completely void of anything, too dark to see what was inside. They were also unaware of any potential danger that lurked here. Though the three cultivators were far from weak, their strength was still slightly lacking when compared to disciples from the bigger sects. Since they were aware of their own strength, they did not want to actively take risks. However, as they were flying by, the canyon gave off some unusual energy fluctuations. Since the sealed world bead was absorbing the spirit Chi Si's world energy at a maddening pace, it definitely caused obvious energy fluctuations. Curious, the three placed their fears aside and flew down, deeper into the canyon. They wanted to find the source of this disturbance. After all, opportunities were hard to come by, and who knew? This might lead them to a treasure that would change their lives. But after finding out that there were two women at the bottom of the canyon, the three of them were terrified. Lu Yen was all right. Although she seemed like a flesh and blood being, she still had a first-order Dao source realm cultivation level. That would align with those that could enter the Four Seasons realm. But the other girl was simply outrageous. She was just a trivial third-order Saint King. No one would have thought that someone of her level would actually appear in the Four Seasons realm. Even if they had seen her with their own eyes, the three were afraid that they were caught in a dream. Furthermore, on closer inspection, this little girl seemed to be using the rich world energy here to cultivate. What is going on? The three men blinked multiple times, obviously confused. Senior brother Huagu, one of the middle-aged men, looked for a while and asked the elderly man in a low voice with a suspicious expression, "How is it possible that a Saint King realm cultivator has entered the Four Seasons realm? Damn it! She must be a disciple of those great sects." Another middle-aged man suddenly voiced out, indignant with gritted teeth. To think Evil Moon Valley was only allowed to take up 3 spots. For just 3 spots, even the Orthodoxy Temple had to pay a considerable amount to obtain them. But these bigger sects, to think they could so recklessly squander such an opportunity. To think they would even allow a disciple in the Saint King realm to occupy one of them. This is simply too much. After hearing him say his piece, the elder one, called Huagu, also nodded. Junior brother Zhou and has a point. These two women should hail from one of the great sects. It only makes sense that their origins are as such. Otherwise, it is impossible for a Saint King realm cultivator to enter this place. Just look at her. She seems to have just broken through and is already at the threshold of origin returning realm. As he spoke, Huagu displayed hints of envy and jealousy. When he cultivated, he had to risk his life for the few cultivation resources available, but for these disciples from great sects it was different. They could easily enter the sealed world, where others could only enter with great effort. Furthermore, with such an opportunity they could easily advance. When he compared the difference in both situations, his mind started to fume. The middle-aged man who spoke earlier showed some fear and said hesitantly, "Since they are from one of the great sects, we'd better go first, in case we cause a misunderstanding. That would be horrendous." "Xiong Ning, what are you afraid of?" The middle-aged man named Zhou and gave the Xiong Ning a sidelong glance and coldly snorted. Even if they are disciples of a great sect, they are only at first-order Dao Source Realm and third-order Saint King Realm. Even if they are the disciples from a great sect, with their strength, even if there was a misunderstanding, what could they possibly do to us? "Who says I'm afraid?" Xiong Ning became angry out of shame and roared, "I just don't want to invite trouble for nothing. Humph! Gutless rat." Zhou and coldly snorted with a look of contempt. He disdained his fellow disciple a fair bit. The bead in that woman's hand, that should be an amazing artifact. Huagu suddenly whispered, his eyes staring straight at the sealed world bead held in Lu Yan's hand. Zhou's eyes twinkled and he asked in a low voice, "Senior brother Huagu, what are you trying to say?" Xiong Ning obviously also realized something was up and his expression slightly changed. Huagu faintly smiled. "We are currently deep underground. There is no one here and hardly anyone would pass by. What's more, the other party's strength is low and they are holding such great treasures. Zhou, after hearing this, understood and smiled. I have long seen how these great sect disciples act and have been displeased with them for a long time now, always flaunting their might and believing themselves to be unbeatable just because they have a good backer. So what? Senior brother Huagu, tell me what you plan to do. This junior brother will follow you to the end. So, it comes to this. Xiong could feel his limbs tremble as his stomach churn. He incoherently warned, if their sect ever finds out what happened to them, not only will we be finished, Evil Moon Valley will not be spared. Zhou shot Xiong a cold glare. If you are afraid, then get lost. We do not need to have someone who will just blow wind in our face and dare not do anything. But let me be clear. If you back out now, you will not obtain any portion of the artifacts and source crystals obtained. Since these two women are from a great sect, I expect a lot of prized possession to be on them. When Xiong heard that, he gulped, and a greedy expression appeared on his fearful face. He was silent for a few breaths before he finally gritted his teeth and agreed. Fine. I will accompany the two senior brothers to advance and retreat together. That's more like it. Zhou couldn't help but smile when he saw Xiong agree. You three pieces of trash. Not far from the other side. Lu Yen suddenly spoke up coldly, and her first sentence made the three Evil Moon Valley members' eyebrows jump. What the hell are you muttering about? Huagu forced himself to hold back the displeasure in his heart. The three of us fellow brothers noticed a strange energy fluctuation deep within this canyon. So we came to check it out. But to think what we found were two girls here who caused it. That's all, Lu Yen replied, still as cold as ice. That's all, Huagu replied. Since you're done with your investigation, why don't you get lost? Lu Yan's words were sharp, without the slightest intention to give face to the other party. This made the men from Evil Moon Valley further convinced that Lu Yen must be from one of the great sects. After all, only the disciples of these great sects would be so arrogant and domineering, even in the face of someone more powerful. A deep-seated explosion was occurring within Huagu, but he still placed a smile on his face as he asked, May I ask which sect do you hail from? What does it have to do with you? Lu Yen coldly snorted. Let's be nice. Huagu smiled faintly. From my point of view, you can only hail from a select number of sects. I am from Evil Moon Valley, and we have had many exchanges with other great sects. We have quite the harmonious relationship with them. Although I must admit that we have interrupted you too, since we have met. Let's consider it to be a sign from fate. He paused for a moment. His gaze turned to Zhang Ruoxi as he spoke. I see that this girl seems to be on the verge of breaking through a great realm. But I guess that is to be expected. After all, this place is extremely rich in world energy. However, we do not know if there are any fierce monster beasts around. With the energy fluctuation, it would not be strange for you two to attract a monster beast. I am afraid with your current level of strength, it would be difficult to cope with any monster beast from this place. He spoke, acting righteous. To hit the hammer while it was still hot, he suggested. We might not be the best, but we would like to stand guard for the two of you. Zhou nodded vigorously at the side and continued. Exactly. We would like to stand guard for you. Even if a monster beast were to come, you do not have to be afraid. Meanwhile, Xiong stayed silent. Lu Yen laughed coldly. Just the three of you trash? If a monster beast appears, I'm afraid the three of you won't be able to fight it. Your words are too hurtful. Huagu's heart was about to explode and leave his chest. He bared it and spoke with a sullen face. We only have good intentions. Even if you don't want to accept them, there is no need to belittle us to that extent. That's right, although Evil Moon Valley is not a great sect like yours, it is not something that can simply be insulted by anyone. Zhou shouted righteously. Though those who were listening carefully would not know how he connected Lu Yan's words with insulting Evil Moon Valley. What's the point of all this farce? Just spit it out. Are you targeting me or this artifact? Lu Yen said, lightly tossing up the sealed world bead in her hand. If you want it, try and grab it. Why beat around the bush? As this statement was made, Huagu's and others' faces changed. Senior brother. Zhou and turned his head and looked at Huagu. Huagu pondered for a moment and replied in a low voice, "It doesn't look like she has other fellow disciples around. We have been circling around them for so long and yet, we do not sense anyone else. Then, is this really a heaven-sent opportunity?" Zhou had an excited expression as he licked his lips. He was completely eager and did not bother to hide anything. He turned to look back at Lu Yen with a ferocious expression, and said in a cold voice, "Little girl, when I beat you to the ground and strip you of your clothes, you better not cry for mercy." He originally never had such evil intent against Lu Yen, however. Her words had created a lingering trace of hatred that could only be quelled with such an act. Once his emotions erupted, he immediately wanted to rob the artifact, and her dignity. The thought of having the opportunity to ravish and defile a beautiful woman from a great sect, who he would never dare to even glance at in the past, made Zhou's blood boil. "Do it!" Huagu bellowed. In an instant, the three from Evil Moon Valley's source chi started to surge. Although they were facing a woman who had a lower cultivation than them, the three were not the slightest bit sloppy or careless. They were giving their all. The old man opened his mouth and spat out a huge bell. The body of the bell was densely engraved with countless small and complicated characters. Source chi poured into it, and the bell swelled up even bigger, a growth rate visible to the naked eye. Once it was done, it looked like a golden fortress. This bell was clearly a defensive artifact. Though Huagu summoned this artifact, not to defend himself, but to capture Zhang Ruoxi, he had a clear objective. After all, no matter how strong Lu Yen was, Zhang Ruoxi was only a third-order Saint King. With such a cultivation, she was too weak to struggle against him. As long as he could capture Zhang Ruoxi first, he knew Lu Yen had to concede. So when he struck, his target was Zhang Ruoxi. But when the bell was about to envelop Zhang Ruoxi, Lu Yen suddenly let out a cold snort. "In your dreams!" She raised her hand and a black feather, about 3 meters long, shot out and flew to Zhang Ruoxi's side, turning into a burning barrier that wrapped Zhang Ruoxi's entire body. The moment the feather became a barrier, a pressure that did not seem to belong to this world suddenly descended. This scared the three from Evil Moon Valley as their bodies trembled with fear. It was as if, in the feather, there was an extremely strong will that was hidden within, leering at the three of them. This caused the three of them to instantly break out in a cold sweat, soaking their clothes. "What is this?" Huagu's eyes widened as he stared at the pitch-black flame barrier wrapping around Zhang Ruoxi. The terrifying scorching power spread out, as if it desired to burn all of existence. Zhang Ruoxi, who was sitting within the barrier, remained motionless, as if she was not affected at all. The bell-like artifact, however, which was glowing due to the terrifying heat from the flames, had its small complicated word engravings melted away one by one. Worse, as soon as the bell came into contact with the black flame barrier, it was tainted with a trace of this black flame. This flame did not go out and continued to burn the spirituality of the artifact. "Divine Spirit's aura!" Huagu shouted in horror. He was a third-order Tao Source Realm cultivator. Even if he had never seen a divine spirit before, he could still deduce with his experience. This frightening pressure, which seemed to be able to burn all of existence. This all indicated to him that they were up against one of the most terrifying beings that ever existed. A divine spirit. Naturally, his guess was not far from the truth. This dark feather was none other than a feather from a divine spirit, Luanfeng. Xianxia gave the Luanfeng feather he found to Lu Yen, and after spending so much time, Lu Yen finally completed her refining of it. She even managed to obtain a trace amount of divine spirit power from it. Even if this divine spirit power was weak, it was not something that a Tao Source Realm cultivator could compete against. That was why Lu Yen did not fear these three. The moment the Evil Moon Valley trio made their move, Lu Yen had already decided her course of action. Summon the divine spirit's feather to guard Zhang Ruoxi first, so that she could go all out. "Hui!" A loud bird-like cry rang out, and the three of them looked up and saw a strange-looking firebird tens of meters in length, clad in red flames flying about. The outer layer of the strange bird's body was a flickering of lightning, indicating that two primary attributes were contained within it. "She's not human," Zhou shouted after noticing this fact. When he saw Lu Yan in her original body, he finally understood why he felt there was something off about her. When he first saw Lu Yan, he felt that this woman was different from ordinary people. It seemed like she a little ethereal. Now that he saw her true form, he concluded that Lu Yan was a living spirit. "She is an artifact spirit," Huagu shouted. Fear from his eyes was quickly replaced with greed. He could not help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha 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 ha! The heavens have presented me with such a gift. This old master was worried about my flame club being unupgradable. Never would I have imagined that I would have the luck to encounter an artifact spirit here." As he spoke, he bellowed to the other two. "Junior brother, senior brother, I only want this artifact spirit. After I get her, you can have the rest. Is that fine with you?" After Zhou and Xiongning heard this, they looked at each other and nodded. "We will abide by senior's decision." "Good." Huagu nodded and eerily stared at Lu Yan. "Looking at your form and how you act, it seems that you already attained some level of consciousness. It's not easy to cultivate to this point. Don't worry. This old master is kind enough to let you live. So long as you enter my flame club obediently, I promise not to destroy your divine sense. How's that?" After he spoke, he summoned out a club artifact. This artifact had a rich aura to it, filled with power. Obviously, it was a Dao Source high-rank grade artifact. Such an artifact could be considered to be an extremely rare treasure. If an artifact spirit such as Lu Yan were to combine with it, and was refined by Huagu, the Flame Club might be promoted to an Emperor artifact. Furthermore, with an Emperor artifact, Huagu, being in the Third Order Dao Source realm, had the opportunity to peek into the mysteries of the Emperor realm. Therefore, even knowing that the sealed world bead was worth a lot, he would be willing to give it up just to subdue Lu Yan. After all, one's cultivation was the most fundamental when it came to one's power. After Huagu spoke, he was faced with Lu Yan's pillar of fire. The flames came down from the sky, as if they were going to melt the earth. They produced an enormous level of power. The evil Moon Valley trio hurriedly avoided it. Huagu continued to persist and shouted, "You should not refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. If you had just accepted the deal, this old master would no longer act and it would be that thing against the two of them. But now that you have refused, do you think it can hold up against all three of us?" He was naturally referring to the Luanfeng's dark feather. To him, Lu Yan using the most powerful artifact in her possession to protect Zhang Ruoxi was the dumbest move she could make. After all, though she managed to protect Zhang Ruoxi, she was no match against the three of them, especially with her artifact gone. Furthermore, once they are done with her, they would move on to Zhang Ruoxi. For someone in the Saint King realm, how could she possibly even resist them? In his mind, the best option was to ignore Zhang Ruoxi and leave her to die. Meanwhile, she would use that feather to attack the three of them. Fu! Another pillar of fire fell down from the sky. Playing with fire in front of this old master, Huagu coldly snorted and threw the flame club, which spun around. The pillar of fire created by Lu Yan made contact with the club. Once they made contact, Huagu spoke, assured of his victory. "It seems that your consciousness is still lacking. PFFF. Lu Yan opened her mouth and a ball of fire the size of a table came crashing down. "I told you it's futile," Huagu shouted impatiently, and Flame Club made contact with the attack once again. Hong hong hong. A loud explosion rang out, and world energy around them became chaotic. "What?" Huagu's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly withdrew his Flame Club and tightly clenched it in his hand. When he looked down to check on it, he found that his Dao Source grade high-rank artifact was now wrapped with pulsating lightning arcs, causing his hand to feel numb. Yes, the power of lightning is no doubt powerful. The greed and desire in Huagu's eyes became more and more obvious. Such an artifact spirit could rarely be found even in 1,000,000 years. It seemed that once he merged his weapon with Lu Yan, not only would he be able to upgrade it to be an Emperor artifact, it would also obtain the power to use lightning. "Senior brother, don't bother talking to her. Since she doesn't want to submit, we just have to force her to." Zhou dodged the attack again and spoke with impatience. "Fine, but be careful. Don't hurt her spirituality." Huagu nodded and did not forget to give a warning. Zhou coldly snorted. "Junior brother is not the best at controlling his strength. If my attacks really hurt her, it's her own fault." Once he said his piece, Zhou shook his wrist. In his hand, a long spear emerged and flashed forward, charging at Lu Yen. The silent Xiongning also acted. He placed his hands together and stimulated his source qi, which ferociously shot forth. Primordial Divine Spear, Burning Sun's Phantom Hand. The two second-order Dao Source Realm cultivators attacked with the power of world principles. By utilizing the power of heaven and earth, the majestic and ferocious attack headed towards Lu Yen. Lu Yan's body swayed as she wrapped her body in a layer of fire, which acted as a barrier to resist the attacks from both sides. Boom! Lu Yen let out a pained cry. The flame barrier which surrounded her was instantly shattered. Although it managed to absorb most of the damage, there was still the residual attack that slammed onto her body. It was powerful enough to cause her to shift and made her lose control of her current form. After the barrier disappeared, Huagu's figure mysteriously appeared close, in front of Lu Yen, his face solemn as he shouted, "Look into this old master's eyes." With those words, a magical power blossomed from his eyes, turning into two vortexes that kept spinning, as if to pull Lu Yan's soul out from her body. This was a soul secret technique, which Huagu only made use of at the most opportune time. He timed it such that Lu Yen simply could not avoid it and was instantly struck. Although Lu Yen had only recently advanced to the level of Dao Source Realm, her combat ability could be considered to be decent. However, she was outnumbered and each of them had a much higher cultivation than her. So, she was unable to deliver a decent fight when the three of them joined forces. After being hit by the soul secret technique, Lu Yan's body was suddenly frozen in midair. Each flap of her wings slowed down. Her mind was in chaos, seemingly unable to resist. Seeing this scene, Huagu was overjoyed, secretly feeling that things were going surprisingly well. He could already imagine the wondrous scene of subduing this Firebird artifact spirit, merging it into his flame club, and allowing his artifact to be promoted to an emperor artifact. A beautiful picture of the future seemed to be unfolding in front of him. "Senior brother, look out!" Zhou suddenly shouted. "What's wrong?" Huagu was shocked, but soon, his eyes widened. He saw, within the Firebird's pupils, that there was another type of flame that was burning. This flame was different. It seemed to be able to burn one's soul. As soon as someone made contact with it, it would cause his knowledge sea to tumble and result in an unimaginable headache. Sun's true fire. Lu Yen had followed Xianxia for so long, and even she was not clear on how much Sun's true fire she had devoured. Furthermore, her body had integrated with two kinds of precious and powerful flames. If not for consuming all of these, Lu Yen would never have been able to take on a solid form as an artifact spirit, much less obtain her level of sentience as an artifact spirit. So, it could be said that Lu Yan's body was extremely complicated, housing many rare and valuable flames. Huagu tried to use the soul secret technique against Lu Yen again, but obviously, it did not work. In a flash, Huagu cried out and retreated. He covered his head and roared at Lu Yen. "Are you this unwilling to submit to this old master?" He roared hysterically. "Since you won't submit, this old master will destroy your consciousness." Once he completed his sentence, he clasped both his hands together and formed a seal. The flame club suddenly became bigger and burned even brighter. Up in the air, it started to tremble and shot towards Lu Yen like an arrow that left its string. At the same time, Zhou and Xiongning both attacked again. Lu Yan's eyes finally showed a hint of panic. Her body swerved around as countless lightning strikes and fireballs flew out, with some mixed in blue ice flames, trying to resist this onslaught. She managed to block off Zhou and Xionning's attack, but the flame club still shot straight at Lu Yen with hardly any decrease in strength. At this rate, The flame club was bound to go through Lu Yan's body and inflict heavy damage to her. You asked for it. After all, only an artifact spirit with its own consciousness that was obedient had its uses. Meanwhile, a chaotic and ignorant artifact spirit that resisted at every turn would only hurt him. Since the other party was unwilling to give in, he was left with no choice but to kill her. But at that moment an unusual fluctuation could be felt. A brave and heroic figure mysteriously appeared in front of Lu Yan. He stretched out a hand, lightly slapped forward and whispered, "Exile!" A void crack opened up, and something like a black hole took shape. And the flame club headed into the black hole. No! Hua Gu's face changed dramatically as he gathered up his source chi in a panic. He only had one thing on his mind, which is to recall his artifact before the black hole closed up. Seeing the black hole quickly closing up, Hua Gu's forehead was drenched with cold sweat. Although he had never seen such a secret technique before, he knew that if he did not recall in time, his artifact would be lost forever. Who? Zhou En could not help but shout with a ruthless expression. Xiong Ning also narrowed his eyes and looked ahead. In the sky, a young man stood quietly in front of the Firebird, his gaze coldly sweeping them. He was fuming with rage. Yang Kai is naturally in a horrendous mood. Originally, he checked around the canyon in advance and found no signs of monster beasts around, so he felt that the bottom of this canyon was safe. Therefore, he decided to leave Zhang Ruoxi and Lu Yan here, even placing the sealed world bead and other important treasures here as well. But never would he have thought that after just a short time, trouble would arise, causing him to have to rush back. Master! Lu Yan saw that Yang Kai had finally arrived and couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. Her huge body flashed as she transformed back into her human form and respectfully stood behind Yang Kai. Yang Kai glanced over at Zhang Ruoxi and saw that she was wrapped in a black flame barrier, one that emitted a familiar aura that made even him tremble slightly. He immediately understood that Lu Yan had used her strongest powers to protect Zhang Ruoxi. If that weren't the case, even if Lu Yan wasn't strong enough to defeat these three, she wouldn't have had so much difficulty. Good job, you've worked hard. Yang Kai nodded at her. I only did what I should, Lu Yan faintly replied. Yang Kai turned his head and coldly swept his eyes across the three below. Who is your excellency? Hua Gu almost suffered a big loss at Yang Kai's hands just now, so he did nothing to conceal his anger. Why are you interfering in my business? Yang Kai raised the corners of his mouth and asked, Are you deaf? Didn't you hear what she called me just now? Hua Gu frowned and asked, So, you are the master of this artifact spirit? At least you're not a total fool. Yang Kai sneered. Impudence! Hua Gu yelled as he spat fiercely. A trivial first-order Dao Source Realm trash dares possess such an artifact spirit? Little brat, this old master advises you to obediently offer this artifact spirit to me, and this old master may still spare your life. If not, today, this will be your burial place. Hua Gu yelled sharply. Ha ha ha. Yang Kai couldn't help letting out a laugh filled with arrogance, as if he didn't put Hua Gu in his eyes at all. A moment later, he smiled and declared, Since you dare to say so, then I'll have to bury you instead. When his words fell, Yang Kai suddenly waved his hand. Along with his movements, a strange pressure suddenly descended from the sky, and the canyon, which was already gloomy, suddenly became darker, as if something was blocking all light from above. Hua Gu and the others looked up in amazement, and the next moment, they all exclaimed, What the hell is that? This is not good, run. The three all yelled as they scattered. Honk! The canyon shook as a behemoth suddenly fell from the air and hit the ground, shattering the surface around it. This behemoth looked like a 50-meter-tall beast with jagged edges and rocky features. Hua Gu and others were dumbfounded. Even with all of their experiences, none of these three could tell what this thing was. At first glance, it looked a bit similar to the legendary stone beast, but after careful observation, they determined it couldn't be, because a stone beast couldn't grow this big. Oh? Finally willing to let me out. As soon as the embodiment appeared, he cracked his arms and neck, looking around with great interest, as if he had not seen the outside world in many years. In fact, this was the truth. After the embodiment absorbed the floating continent, besides when Yongkai brought it out to deal with Purple Star, it had remained inside the sealed world bead. Since then, for so many years, the embodiment had not seen the outside world. The reason was simple: after fusing with the floating continent, it was simply too big to freely take out. If Yongkai wanted to summon his embodiment from the small sealed world, he would have to expend a huge amount of spiritual energy. How could Yongkai spare so much energy to summon his embodiment in the middle of a battle? As a result, the embodiment remained inside the sealed world bead until now. As time passed, the innate abilities of the stone puppet clan slowly manifested, allowing the embodiment to slowly temper its body and eliminate unnecessary impurities, causing its massive body to slowly become smaller. But that had not been enough to reduce its size to a manageable level. It was only when Yongkai obtained the heaven-devouring battle law that a turning point came. This secret art could be described as tailor-made for the embodiment. Since cultivating the heaven-devouring battle law, coupled with the innate abilities of the stone puppet clan, the embodiment had managed to rapidly increase the rate at which it tempered itself. Even so, the embodiment was still a huge monster compared to ordinary humans, and Yongkai felt a third of his spiritual energy had been drained just to bring it out a moment ago. The visual impact of such a huge body was undoubtedly shocking, especially since it seemed to appear out of nowhere. This caught the trio from Evil Moon Valley off guard and left them stunned for a while, as if they were lost in some kind of illusion, unable to believe their eyes. Bits of gravel continued to fall from the embodiment as it stretched itself out. There was no need for Yongkai to explain anything. As soon as the embodiment appeared, it immediately understood the situation and recognized Huagu and his companions as enemies. Grinning towards Huagu, the embodiment grinned and spoke in a grating voice. A third-order Tao source realm. As the first to die by my hand after so many years, it's not a bad choice. Good. I'll leave it to you. I'm interested in seeing just how much ability you have now. Yongkai nodded lightly. Then you're in for a pleasant surprise. The embodiment smiled and lowered its stance before punching at Huagu. The fist didn't seem to carry any trace of energy, like it was only done using pure physical force. But even so, strong pressure and wind blew from this fist as it pounded towards Huagu like a falling meteor. Huagu was shocked and exclaimed, "This can't be real." He didn't dare to test that notion though and hurriedly leapt up into the air. Although his cultivation at the third-order Tao source realm was not weak, how could he dare to take such a blow head-on? The embodiment's massive body made turning and moving somewhat awkward. However, seemingly having expected Huagu's reaction long ago, the embodiment shot out a fist towards the spot where Huagu tried to flee. Huagu screamed again and hurriedly dodged. Soon, Huagu managed to adjust though. After avoiding the embodiment's initial attacks, Huagu determined that, although the huge stone man seemed quite powerful and intimidating, its attacks were monotonous and simple, so they were easy to avoid. Just as this thought passed through his head, the embodiment suddenly let out a cold snort and snapped, jumping around like a flea. "If you're a real man, fight me head-on," Huagu exclaimed. "You think this old master is some kind of idiot? Do you think such childish provocation will work on me?" "Hey!" The embodiment grinned. "Whether it works or not, there's no harm trying. Since that's the case, let's try this instead." As it spoke, it stretched out its hand and slapped its palms down, causing a strange force to surge out and draw in the earth and ground below. Rock and earth quickly flew up into the embodiment's palms, and in the blink of an eye, a spear-like object had condensed. This spear was purely composed of gravel and dirt from the canyon floor, but it still looked extremely strong and powerful. Obviously, it was being solidified somehow by the embodiment. With the spear in hand and its massive body, the embodiment was the very picture of might. Gripping the spear tightly, it mercilessly hurled it towards Huagu. "Xiao!" A sharp whistle rang out as the air in the canyon split apart. A huge vortex appeared as space tore from the residual force of this spear, which seemed to ignore distance and appeared directly in front of Huagu. Huagu's eyes widened in horror as the spear rapidly enlarged in his eyes. With a shout, He summoned a shield-like artifact that turned into a light curtain, protecting his front. Honk! The rock spear hit the light curtain and instantly shattered it into tiny points of light before continuing on and impacting the canyon floor. With a loud bang, rubble flew out and a huge circular pit opened up where the spear had landed. Huagu was drenched in cold sweat as he stood to the side, pale, fear gripping his heart tightly. If he hadn't dodged fast enough just now, this terrifying attack would have been enough to turn him into a blood mist. The shield he just summoned was a Dao Source-grade mid-rank defensive artifact, one that had protected him for countless years already. It was powerful enough to even resist Dao Source-grade high-rank offensive artifacts without much difficulty. But today it was crushed by a strange stone giant in one blow. A Dao Source-grade mid-rank defensive artifact was no different from paper in front of this tyrannical force. Even scarier, though, was the fact that the spear was composed entirely of condensed soil and rock, a fact Huagu had witnessed personally. The opponent's attack strength was so ridiculous. How was he even supposed to fight such a monstrosity? At this moment, Huagu couldn't help but think about retreating, and at the same time, he was extremely annoyed. He should have realized even before Xianxia appeared that fighting with disciples from the big sects would not be beneficial at all. Even if these disciples had lower cultivations, they would definitely be bestowed with incredible artifacts and treasures from their elders. None of these elites could be taken lightly. Unfortunately, he had been blinded by his own greed and looked down on Xianxia's first-order Dao Source realm cultivation. But even if he regretted his actions now, it was too late. Why is your face so pale? Where did all the courage you showed just now disappear to? A voice laden with ridicule reached Huagu's ear, and when he glanced back, his entire body clenched in fear. Huagu saw the embodiment pressing its hands down again, causing the rock and soil beneath it to swirl upwards and quickly condensing into two spears exactly like the one from before. At the same time, Lu Yen and Xiongning had already concluded their fight. Lu Yen, who had been besieged earlier by 3 enemies, had been at a distinct disadvantage and had built up quite a bit of resentment, so when the embodiment attacked Huagu, she quickly found Xiongning to seek some redress. Even if Xiongning's cultivation was a little higher than hers, Lu Yen still fought equally with him, and soon even gained the upper hand. This time, Lu Yen did not reveal her true body and chose to fight solely in her human form. In this form, Lu Yen could only exert 80% of her strength, so it was obvious that if she transformed into her Firebird form, she would easily be able to suppress Xiongning. Lu Yen had swallowed so many strange flames, and as an artifact spirit, increasing her strength was extremely difficult, far more so than a human cultivator's breakthroughs. As a result, Lu Yan's strength was far more tempered, allowing her to fight enemies above her own cultivation with ease. It was only natural that Xiongning would not be her opponent. In the depths of the canyon, 2 battlefields raged. As for Xianxia, he didn't move and neither did Zhouwen. Xianxia didn't move because he wanted to see what kind of pleasant surprise his embodiment would give him, while at the same time he had to guard Zhang Ruoxi. He had to make sure that embodiment did not cause too much commotion here and interfere with this little girl's cultivation. Zhouwen didn't move because Xianxia didn't move. At this moment, Xianxia's divine sense was locked onto him, hanging over his head like a sharp blade. It was causing him to have the horrible illusion that even the slightest movement would result in him turning into a fresh corpse. This made him pale and panic deep in his heart. He could perceive that Xianxia's divine sense was as powerful as a third-order Dao source realms, far surpassing his own. Fighting such a person would definitely not benefit him. Observing the other battlefields, both Huagu and Xiongning seemed to be at a disadvantage. Zhouwen felt bitter in his heart, knowing that this time, they had really kicked an iron plate. He quietly took a look at Xianxia and found that the other party was not paying attention to him. So Zhouwen gathered his courage, squeezed out a smile, cupped his fists and said, "This friend?" Xianxia heard him, turned his head and lightly asked, "Do you have any last words?" Zhouwen's brow twitched as he replied, "This friend misunderstands. I just wanted to say that I don't know these 2 people. We only met by chance and came here together." Xianxia looked at him indifferently, still unmoved. On the contrary, when the other 2 heard his remarks, they were shocked. Xiongning glared at Zhou and incredulously as he avoided Lu Yan's attack and shouted, "Senior brother Zhou? What are you talking about?" Huagu was also furious and angrily shouted, "Zhouan, you dare claim you have nothing to do with this when you were the first one to act. That man called you senior brother." Yang Kai pointed at Xiongning. Zhouan sternly said, "He must have problems with his head. This friend should not listen to any of his nonsense." As he spoke, he put on a flattering smile. "Friend, this one really had no ill intentions towards you and was simply dragged along by them to investigate this place where we encountered your artifact spirit by accident. Fortunately, this friend's artifact spirit suffered no damage, so I hope this friend can let this small matter go." After spouting this shameless remark, before Yang Kai even had a chance to reply, Huagu on the other side turned red with anger and coughed up a mouthful of blood, all his veins puffing out as he roared furiously, "Shameless! Do you not have any face? Shut up!" Zhouan shouted angrily. "This Zhou, from now on, has nothing to do with you villains. Wayaya?" Huagu was infuriated and let loose an odd roar from his lips, almost as if he had gone insane. At that moment, he was caught by the embodiment when it stomped the ground hard and shouted, "Earth Prison!" A peculiar power gushed out from the embodiment's huge body and poured into the ground, causing it to liquefy and form a number of long hands which flew up into the air like giant whips. Huagu was caught off guard and directly entangled by these long whip-like hands. "Not good!" Huagu exclaimed as he tried desperately to break free, but soon he was dragged down to the ground by an irresistible force. Soon, his body was pulled underground until only his head remained exposed. Strangely, the moment Huagu sank into the ground, the liquefied ground was restored to its original state. The ground then solidified to the point where no matter how hard Huagu struggled, he couldn't break free. He was like a man who had fallen into quicksand and was unable to escape. The embodiment's massive body stood in front of him like a mountain, casting a huge shadow over him. "Oh? Is that a new ability?" Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he looked on in interest. He could not recall the embodiment using such a technique before and did not know if it was an innate ability of the Stone Puppet Clan, or if it was something it comprehended after cultivating the heaven-devouring battle law. On the other side, Zhou trembled. Seeing Huagu, a third-order Dao Source Realm Master, lose so quickly, how could he dare to remain? Quickly cupping his fists, he shouted, "This friend, I wish you good fortune. This one will take his leave." As he spoke, he tried to fly up and escape. "Did I let you leave?" Yang Kai waved his hand, sending out a moon blade to cut off Zhouan's path. Zhouan paused, looked back, and asked haltingly, "What other advice does friend have to give?" Although Zhouan put on a humble attitude, there was still a vigilant light in the depths of his eyes. Yang Kai had no doubt that, if he attacked first, Zhouan would surely counterattack. This man was willing to betray his fellow sect brothers, so he probably wouldn't believe anyone. "I have no advice for you," Yang Kai said lightly, "but since you say that you are not with them, don't you think you should prove yourself?" "Prove myself?" Zhouan's eyes flickered, but soon he nodded and said, "This one understands. Please observe well, friend." Saying so, he summoned his spear artifact and poured his source chi into it. Then he jumped out and rushed towards the battle between Lu Yan and Xiongning. With his spear trembling, principal strength began to swirl around it and condense at the tip in a brilliant display of light. "Primordial divine spear," as he shouted, his eyes filled with murderous intent, as he directed his attack at Xiongning. Xiongning was shocked. Lu Yan alone was enough to suppress him, and after losing his composure as a result of Zhouan's shameless behavior just now, he was already at a serious disadvantage in this battle. Now, Zhouan had actually attacked him, causing Xiongning to feel the aura of death grip him. After hurriedly blocking Lu Yan's blow, Xiongning shouted, "Senior brother Zhou, are you crazy?" Zhouan coldly snorted without replying, instead pouring more power into his spear before throwing it out with full force. The terrifying attack flew within a hair's breadth of Xiongning before it shot towards Lu Yan. "I knew you would do this from the beginning." Lu Yen was neither panicked nor flustered as she coldly snorted and blew out a pillar of flame and lightning towards the approaching spear. Honk! The huge explosion occurred, drowning the figures of the three on the battlefield. At the same time, Yang Kai raised the corner of his mouth into a sneer. He had clearly seen Zhou and used this attack as a feint to create a scenario where he could burn his blood essence in order to display a secret technique that caused a blood-red glow to cover his body, dramatically increasing his speed as he fled into the canyon. Shrewd and crafty, an exemplary scum, Yang Kai praised. If he had been in Zhou En's position, he would not have been able to come up with a better method of escape in order to survive. However, his feint not only distracted Lu Yen, but also Xiong Ning. Xiong Ning, who was deceived, was stunned stupid after this attack as he believed he was about to die just now. But before he could recover from his shock, Lu Yen pounced on him again. Forcefully composing himself, Xiong Ning continued his battle. Deep in the canyon, Zhou En was fleeing madly. After seeing Huagu being imprisoned, he knew that he would definitely die if he didn't flee. Without even mentioning the strange stone giant, just that strange first-order Dao Source Realm youth was not an opponent he could deal with by himself. Zhou En had never seen such a monster before, with a divine sense on par with a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator while only having first-order cultivation. Believing in the expression, "A wise man will submit to the circumstances," Zhou En had always been a flexible individual who understood the circumstances and adapted accordingly. In the sect, he had a wide range of contacts and was well known for managing complex interpersonal relationships. This secret technique that burned his essence blood consumed a lot of his strength, but it could dramatically increase his speed for a short period of time. So Zhou En was confident that even if Yang Kai was unusually strong, he would not be caught. Unfortunately, just as he was thinking he had escaped, Zhou En saw the space in front of him ripple oddly. Zhou En was taken aback and hurriedly came to a stop as he stared forward suspiciously. The next moment, though, he saw a figure slowly walk out from these ripples and smile at him playfully. "You?" Zhou En's eyes bulged as he stared at Yang Kai in disbelief, calling out in alarm, "How?" However, Zhou En had a wide range of experiences, so it only took him a moment to think of something and exclaim, "Space principles." This scene in front of him was exactly the same as the legendary teleportation secret technique those who cultivated the Tao of space could use. Zhou En could not think of another explanation, although some special artifacts could allow one to teleport short distances, and they truly had similar effects to what he just witnessed. Zhou En was certain he did not see Yang Kai use any such artifact. He immediately understood that the youth in front of him was someone who had cultivated the Tao of space to an extremely high level. After realizing this, Zhou En's face turned ashen. Everyone with half a brain knew that trying to flee from an enemy that was proficient in the Tao of space was a futile endeavor. At this moment, Zhou En's mouth was filled with bitterness, as if he had eaten a sour bug. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but Yang Kai interrupted him directly. "Whatever you have to say, I will treat it as a fart." As he finished speaking, Yang Kai waved his hand and sent out a dozen moon blades. Zhou En's heart sank as he summoned his spear and assumed a defensive stance. A ringing noise sounded out as the moon blades were cut down by Zhou En's spear as he was pushed back again and again. Before he could stabilize his figure, Yang Kai suddenly disappeared from his view. Zhou En was shocked and quickly released his divine sense, but couldn't find any trace of Yang Kai. He instinctively flipped his spear and stabbed behind himself, but hit only empty space. A voice that horrified Zhou En, like that of the Reaper of Death, called out from beside him at that moment, "Myriad sword arts. Radiant moon swallows the wolf." An astonishing sword chi swept out at that moment and washed towards Zhou En, filling the gloomy canyon with a light 1,000 times brighter than the moon in an instant. In that moment, Zhou En felt an odd sense of clarity. With an intense roar, he poured all of his source chi into his spear and unleashed his complete strength and skill, sending out thousands of spear shadows to form a dazzling, multicolored wave of force. The spears smashed out and caused a violent explosion, after which hot blood splashed about. After the dazzling white light dissipated, Yang Kai held the Myriad's sword quietly. Not far in front of him, Zhou stood covered in blood with innumerable big and small wounds covering his body. His physique had been thrashed and his bones were exposed in many places. His clothes were shattered and the red glow that had radiated from his form had completely vanished. At this moment, his aura was so weak it was almost imperceptible. With great difficulty, he lifted his gaze towards the myriad sword in Yang Kai's hand, and the corners of his lips curved into a bitter grin. Emperor, artifact, this Zhou's death was not undeserved. With these words, he fell from the air into the canyon, his eyes quickly losing their luster before he even hit the ground. When Yang Kai rushed back, the battle between Lu Yen and Xiongning had also concluded with Lu Yen winning as expected. However, she had not killed Xiongning and instead just maimed him and thrown him to the ground. Xiongning's aura was very feeble and he was groaning continuously, looking very miserable. On the other side, Huagu was still imprisoned by the earth prison, his head still exposed, with the embodiment sitting cross-legged in front of him with its huge hands spread out like two giant claws and grabbing the void at the place where Huagu was. A type of mysterious energy was flowing from those two giant hands. Under this power, the source chi and even Huagu's physique were quickly transforming into a stream of pure energy that was pouring into the embodiment's body and being completely absorbed. Seeing this scene, Yang Kai's eyes shrank slightly. Master! Lu Yen walked over. Her beautiful eyes filled with shock as she asked in a low voice, "What is this secret art?" She was also stunned by the actions of the embodiment. Although Huagu and his companions' methods were despicable, and their deaths weren't worth pitying, what the embodiment was doing at this moment seemed to be extracting Huagu's vitality and essence. It was literally refining him into its own strength. Huagu's body rapidly shriveled up under the embodiment's actions, his skin cracking and his complexion turning sallow, like all the water was being drained from his body. His third-order Tao source realm cultivation was also rapidly regressing. This kind of death, where one experienced the despair and torture of losing everything they had ever cultivated to achieve, was far more frightening than simply having one's corpse shredded into 10,000 pieces. The heaven-devouring battle law, Yang Kai replied in a low voice. He was also surprised because he hadn't expected his embodiment to have cultivated the heaven-devouring battle law to such an extent already. As for the scene before him, it was actually quite familiar. When Yang Kai released Wu Mengchuan from Blue Feather Sect's bone prison, the latter had used the heaven-devouring battle law to kill and devour all the other cultivators in the prison, restoring himself to his peak state in a very short period of time. The embodiment obviously hadn't reached the same level as Wu Mengchuan, but the essence of the technique it was using was the same, drawing out the energy of others to strengthen oneself. The heaven-devouring battle law could swallow everything which contained any form of energy in this world, allowing one to cultivate at an extraordinary pace. This secret art was extremely overbearing and evil, which was precisely why the creator of this heaven-defying secret arts, heaven-devouring great emperor, had provoked public anger and ultimately doomed himself. This secret art is too wicked and domineering. Lu Yen frowned, seemingly unhappy. Yang Kai nodded lightly, agreeing with her sentiment, especially after seeing the scene in front of him. He had to admit that this was an extremely evil secret art. As the two conversed, Huagu's vitality finally dried up and he died. His whole body now nothing but skin and bones, with most of his physique having been sucked away. As for the embodiment, it showed an unsatisfied appearance as it stretched out its hand to draw over the half-dead Xiongning, intending for him to suffer the same fate as Huagu. A tragic cry reverberated in the canyon for some time. A while later, Xiongning also became a mummified corpse. The embodiment finally exhaled contentedly. Yang Kai also clearly felt that after using the heaven-devouring battle law and swallowing the essences of these two Tao source cultivators, the embodiment had grown noticeably stronger. What's more, there was a kind of strange glow apparent in its eyes now. Through their soul connection, Yang Kai faintly felt that his soul clone, which inhabited his embodiment, was a bit different now and had a strange aura about it. This secret art. It's a good thing you didn't cultivate it. It was really a wise decision. The embodiment spoke in his rough voice. Why do you say that? Yang Kai raised his brows. The embodiment answered. Before now, I had only absorbed energy from ores and inanimate objects, so I didn't notice anything in particular, only that this secret art was extremely powerful and allowed me to improve my strength at an astonishing rate. But now, there is something which is affecting my soul, like a lingering bloodthirst, making me want to slaughter and devour more. As he spoke, his eyes flashed with a faint red light. Could it be some kind of addiction? Xianxia touched his chin and muttered to himself. The embodiment shook his head and said, "Perhaps, but that's not the point. The point is that while using this secret art to devour other living creatures, it also absorbs some of their intentions, affecting my soul." "I understand." Xianxia nodded and asked, "Then you are now—" "I'm fine." The embodiment waved his giant hand. "I speculate that the other things that were absorbed were the remnant thoughts and resentments of these cultivators. If those kinds of things were absorbed by you, they would be extremely difficult to purge, but I'm different." At this point, the embodiment grinned and patted his body, proudly saying, "This stone puppet body is innately able to purge impurities, so I think, as long as I spend some time resting, the situation will resolve itself." "Then we shouldn't delay. Go back and rest first," Xianxia said, taking the sealed world bead from Lu Yen and using his divine sense to move his embodiment back inside. "Will that big guy be all right?" Lu Yen asked worriedly. Of course, the physique of the stone puppet clan is specialized in this kind of thing, but he probably won't be able to use the heaven-devouring battle law to devour anything until he has completely purified those remnants, Xianxia replied. After this incident, Xianxia gained a faint understanding of why heaven-devouring Great Emperor was killed in the past. It seemed that it was not just his act of wantonly devouring everything that caused others to resent him, but also due to changes in his mental state. For instance, if such a powerful cultivator only thought about devouring this and devouring that all day, no one would have a sense of security. Furthermore, at heaven-devouring Great Emperor's cultivation, he wouldn't be interested in devouring ordinary treasures or cultivators. Only other great emperors would be able to satisfy him. Even if just to protect themselves, the other great emperors would have to join forces to get rid of him. As Xianxia was lost in thought, he suddenly turned his head to the side and muttered in surprise, "Is she going to break through?" He suddenly discovered that there was an unusual energy fluctuation coming from Zhang Ruoxi, one that was consistent with signs of a breakthrough. Without waiting for his command, Lu Yen took the Luan Feng feather back. "This little girl's physique is a bit strange." Lu Yen looked at her and whispered, "She seems to be able to swallow world energy directly, not even needing to refine it before she can add it to her own strength. A special constitution?" Xianxia frowned and shook his head. "There shouldn't be anything special about her physique. I checked that very carefully long ago. But her bloodline power is somewhat unusual. The space spirit jade only reacted to Zhang Ruoxi because of some kind of inherited bloodline power. However, Xianxia didn't know what kind of bloodline this was, let alone what kind of connection there was between the space spirit jade and her. Regardless of the reason, Zhang Ruoxi's cultivation speed was simply astonishing. She didn't have a good cultivation environment before, but she had still managed to perform fairly well. Although her cultivation pace wasn't slow before, it had improved after Xianxia gifted her the marrow washing pill. With this pill, any cultivator below the Origin King realm would be able to cultivate significantly faster than their original aptitude would allow. However, once said cultivator reached the Origin King realm, the effects of the pill would disappear. But just looking at this spirit chi-si, it was as if some kind of certain restriction inside her body was released, allowing her to madly swallow the surrounding world energy, leading to a breakthrough to the level of the Third Order Saint King realm in a very short period of time. Things didn't end there, and after just a short time she was on the verge of another breakthrough to the Origin Returning realm. After one broke through from the Saint King realm to the Origin Returning realm, one needed to condense their sure. Xianxia had also experienced this process, so he naturally knew about its difficulty. As such, he quickly prepared to send a message to Zhang Ruoxi to give her some advice. With his current cultivation, he was qualified to give pointers. But before he could even speak, a shocking scene appeared before him. An invisible aura suddenly burst from Zhang Ruoxi's body, one that was condensed of her saint chi and spiritual energy and extended about 10 meters from her figure. Inside of this 10-meter radius, she could clearly see and feel every pebble and blade of grass. Sure. Yang Kai's expression turned extremely weird. Zhang Ruo, she had unexpectedly condensed her sure instantly, without the slightest difficulty or need for advice. Furthermore, she had not even broken through to the origin returning realm yet. Yang Kai had never heard of such an astonishing feat. Lu Yan's beautiful eyes also flickered with surprise. Up in the sky, dark clouds began to gather and winds began to swirl inside the depths of the canyon. After Zhang Ruo, she had condensed her own sure. Her world energy baptism soon followed. World energy gathered before forming a column that descended towards Zhang Ruoxi's delicate body like a bolt of lightning. With a muffled snort, Zhang Ruoxi's face showed a faint pained expression. Yang Kai and Lu Yan retreated immediately to observe from afar. Their current cultivations were too high. If they rushed to assist Zhang Ruoxi's, they would only stimulate the world energy baptism, leading to unpredictable consequences. Zhang Ruoxi's breakthrough could only be passed by her. This little girl always looked so weak and delicate that Yang Kai couldn't help secretly worrying about whether she would succeed. Before he could worry for long though, his eyes suddenly bulged as he stared behind Zhang Ruoxi. Behind this little girl, a blurry phantom suddenly appeared. This phantom was ethereal and looked almost illusionary, but it soon condensed into a giant that was several dozen meters tall. That's... Yang Kai couldn't help but whisper in shock. Lu Yan's face also paled. She didn't know why, but she felt a fatal threat from this phantom and panic from the bottom of her heart, making her want to flee. At this moment, the true appearance of the phantom was revealed. It looked like a giant woman wearing armor with a long cloak and holding a giant sword, her hair flying wildly in the air. The woman's figure was rough and heroic. This figure was still somewhat blurry, and even its outline was a bit unstable. However, it did bear a certain resemblance to Zhang Ruoxi. It was like looking at an older version of this little girl in shining white armor. As this huge phantom manifested, it slowly raised its head and glanced up at the surging world energy that had gathered in the sky. Suddenly, this female figure opened her mouth and inhaled sharply. A staggering scene unfolded before Yang Kai's eyes in the next instant. As this phantom inhaled, all the world energy which was supposed to fall upon Zhang Ruoxi as her baptism was sucked into the phantom figure's mouth and disappeared. After finishing this, the phantom woman lowered her head, transformed into a stream of light, and sank back into Zhang Ruoxi's body, like she had never even existed. But before this phantom left, Yang Kai faintly felt that she had glanced over at him. Even if their eyes hadn't met though, and it only lasted for a moment, Yang Kai was terribly frightened by the humble feeling which overcame him. What? Lu Yan's voice trembled a little. Although the frightening phantom woman had disappeared, the fear left in her heart did not abate, making her tremble all over. Yang Kai shook his head dumbly. Honk! A halo of energy suddenly exploded from Zhang Ruoxi's body and rushed out into the surroundings. After the phantom was retracted into her body, Zhang Ruoxi actually broke through directly to the origin returning realm without any obstruction, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Yang Kai was completely dumbfounded. Whether it was Zhang Ruoxi who directly condensed her own sure before her breakthrough, or the appearance of the strange phantom woman, or her sudden breakthrough, everything he just witnessed was far beyond his ability to comprehend. It was as if he just witnessed a fantastical dream. At this moment, only one thought lingered in his mind though. Just what kind of bloodline power did Zhang Ruoxi inherit? Was that massive female phantom a projection of the Zhang family's ancestor? Master, I want to return first, Lu Yan suddenly said. Yang Kai glanced at her and found that her condition was a bit unsteady and nodded, bringing her back into the sealed world bead. As for Zhang Ruoxi, who was now an origin-returning realm cultivator, she showed no signs of stopping her cultivation as she continued to madly devour the surrounding world energy, her delicate body acting like a bottomless pit that was able to absorb an infinite amount of energy. The sealed world bead also continued its absorption of the surrounding world energy, and soon the spirit chi-si at the bottom of the canyon became thin. One day later, the canyon which had originally been filled with a fog of world energy was completely clear. The spirit Qi had disappeared and the canyon had become the same as the rest of the Four Seasons realm. Only now did Zhang Ruoxi let out a light breath and slowly open her eyes. She seemed to be ignorant of the changes that had taken place to her and slightly frowned after opening her eyes, spreading her hands out in front of herself as she lightly stretched. After a while, she recovered and realized that someone was staring at her. So she looked up only to meet Yang Kai's eyes. "Sir!" Zhang Ruoxi stood up and exclaimed softly. "Congratulations, you have successfully made a breakthrough to the origin returning realm." Yang Kai smiled lightly. Zhang Ruoxi pursed her lips and muttered, "I don't know what happened. It was like I just fell asleep and suddenly became like this." "Fell asleep?" Yang Kai raised his brow. "So, you don't recall anything about what happened just now?" Zhang Ruoxi looked around and asked in amazement, "What happened?" She turned her head to the side and looked around and quickly discovered two shriveled corpses, causing her to pale and let out a cry of fright. "Did someone attack us?" Yang Kai smiled bitterly and shook his head, not knowing how to explain the unusual scenes he had witnessed and instead choosing to say, "It was just a few blind fools who came here courting death." But Zhang Ruoxi reacting like this made him have some guesses. There were rumors that some powerful monster beasts, especially divine spirits and their descendants, had incredible strength from birth, and that their strength would grow even if they did not put in much work as long as they had enough accumulation over a long period of time. This was primarily because their bloodlines would slowly awaken, allowing them to ultimately stand at the top of the world. Zhang Ruoxi's situation must be somewhat similar to those monster beasts and divine spirits. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why her strength improved so dramatically in just 2 short days without her even noticing how. Considering all this, Yang Kai asked, "Ruoxi, did someone explain to you how to break through to the origin returning realm and how to condense your sure?" "No." Zhang Ruoxi shook her head. When Ruoxi was still living at home, Ruoxi's strength was still very low and old ancestor said that he would explain everything once Ruoxi became a third-order Saint King. Yang Kai nodded when he heard these words, remembering that he too had never told Zhang Ruoxi about these things. The breakthrough to the origin returning realm wasn't too critical a junction, so even if no one explained anything, a cultivator would slowly be able to figure things out for themselves. However, condensing one's sure was not something that could be understood or completed in short order, but Zhang Ruoxi had actually done so in an instant. In other words, the method to condense her sure had long ago been rooted in her subconscious, probably an inheritance of her bloodline. "Sir, is there something wrong with Ruoxi's cultivation?" Zhang Ruoxi asked anxiously. "There is not." Yang Kai shook his head quickly to prevent her from misunderstanding. After thinking for a moment, he added, "You've just experienced a breakthrough, so what is most important now is to consolidate your cultivation. Go back to the sealed world bead for now." "Yes." Zhang Ruoxi nodded meekly and relaxed, allowing Yang Kai to send her back into the sealed world bead. Standing there, Yang Kai was immersed in his thoughts and confusion for a while. He hadn't asked Zhang Ruoxi about the situation with the giant female phantom because she probably didn't know anything about it either. A few moments later, he turned his head to look to the side where a stream of light was quickly approaching. Shortly, Xianxia appeared in front of him with a happy disposition, obviously having had a good harvest. "What happened?" Xianxia asked in shock when she saw the 2 mummified corpses on the ground. "Someone came courting death," Yang Kai curtly replied without explaining much. He did not ask what she had gained. After all, he had already promised that anything she picked up would belong to her. Instead, he simply said, "You can go back first, I still have to rush to the realm of winter." "Wait a moment." "What?" Xianxia smiled and said, "I suddenly remembered something on the way back." Yang Kai didn't reply but motioned with his eyes for her to continue. "There is a hidden spot in the 2 Seasons mountain range. Are you interested in exploring it?" Xianxia asked with a smile. "How do you know?" Yang Kai asked in surprise. Xianxia answered, "I am a disciple of Star Soul Palace. If nothing had happened, I would have had one of the 40 slots the palace obtained for myself. I made preparations for the 4 Seasons realm a long time ago. So what's so strange about my knowing a secret or two? The 2 Seasons mountain range?" Yang Kai showed a contemplative expression. Rest assured, although I don't know what you have to do in the realm of winter, you'll have to cross the mountain range first, so it won't take much time. Do you have an exact location? Yang Kai asked. Hua Qingxi couldn't help rolling her eyes and retort. I found out about this hidden location from clues left over in my sect's ancient books. Although I have a map of sorts, the exact directions aren't very clear. At best, I have a rough understanding of where this place might be. If you really want to explore it, you'll have to find it yourself. So, you don't even know what's inside? Yang Kai asked. Hua Qingxi showed a stunned expression before she pursed her lips into a grin and said, It looks like you don't know much about this Four Seasons realm. What do you mean? Yang Kai frowned. Hua Qingxi chuckled and asked, You know this is the Four Seasons realm? But do you know who made it? Do you know? Yang Kai frowned. Hua Qingxi proudly said, If I said I don't know, what could you do? Yang Kai suddenly grinned and said, Tell me. Seeing him jump straight to threatening her, Hua Qingxi couldn't help pouting as she snorted. Flowing Time Great Emperor? Have you heard of him? Yang Kai shook his head. Hua Qingxi's expression became haughty as she continued. Since ancient times, those who have been eligible to be called Great Emperor were all top masters in this world. But even among the top, there are still some who stand out. From all the historical records I have read, there have been several dozen great emperors who have fallen in the past, and the Flowing Time Great Emperor is one of them. The Flowing Time Great Emperor cultivated a divine ability called the Time Flies Seal. Once this divine ability is used, it can cause 1,000 years to pass by in a moment, causing anything and anyone caught in it to wither and die. How did such a powerful great emperor die? No one knows, but there are rumors. This Four Seasons realm was his secluded realm, and it was constructed by the Flowing Time Great Emperor using his miraculous abilities. There are also rumors that somewhere in the Four Seasons realm, there is a majestic temple called the Flowing Time Temple, which was left behind by the Flowing Time Great Emperor and was originally his secluded home. There are infinite benefits to be found inside such a secluded home, and if one can obtain even just one or two things from it, their future progress will be smooth and unimpeded. Such rumors are widely known among the great forces, but unfortunately, no one has been able to confirm them so far. There are only some vague records that indicate that the secret location I told you about is related to the Flowing Time Temple. As she narrated triumphantly, it really aroused Yang Kai's interest. But if you find it too bothersome to search, then just pretend you didn't hear anything. Hua Qingxi intentionally teased Yang Kai's desires. Yang Kai decisively held out a hand to her. What do you want? Hua Qingxi asked vigilantly. Bring out the map. Hua Qingxi immediately covered her space ring and jumped back a few steps before gritting her teeth and vigilantly glaring. I warn you, if you dare try to force me, What will you do? Yang Kai approached her with a wicked grin and said, There's no one here, so even if you shout your lungs out, no one will come to save you. Besides, all I need is a thought and you would obediently offer that map to me. Shameless. Beast. Don't come near. Come here and I'll scream. Good. Good. I'll just give it to you. Hua Qingxi took out a piece of animal skin from her space ring and threw it to Yang Kai before angrily cursing. Are you having fun? A big man bullying me. A weak woman? Have you no shame? Yang Kai ignored her and just looked at the crudely drawn map on the animal skin, finding it just as Hua Qingxi had said, lacking in clues or exact directions. The entire Four Seasons realm was divided into 4 domains: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. With such drastically divergent environments, when two met, their border would naturally become extremely strange. The Two Seasons mountain range was that very border, and it extended throughout the entire Four Seasons realm. This mountain range was like a giant cross that divided the 4 domains equally. This information was contained in the jade slip from before, so when Hua Qingxi mentioned the Two Seasons mountain range, Yang Kai was not too surprised. However, judging from the information revealed by Hua Qingxi, the Azure Sun Temple was still concealing some things from him. At least the information about the Flowing Time Temple was not shared with him. This was also obvious though. After all, he was an outsider. Morong Xiao Xiao had given him the jade slip that recorded most of the Four Seasons realm's information, but Yang Kai knew he had acquired it only because Gao Shueting had allowed him to. Anything that was not recorded was obviously treated as secret information within the sect. However, Yang Kai was also certain that those from Azure Sun Temple knew whether the Flowing Time Temple really existed or not. On the map that Hua Qingxi had given to Yang Kai, the location of the temple was recorded as somewhere between the realm of summer and the realm of winter, so for Yang Kai, this trip was really just a quick stop along the way. Storing away the map and returning Hua Qingxi to the sealed world bead, Yang Kai summoned his ship and began flying in the direction of the realm of winter as quick as lightning. After hurrying along for a day, an unimaginably long mountain range appeared before Yang Kai. Even from a distance, Yang Kai could tell that this mountain range was lush, with deep valleys and extensive forests. The side which Yang Kai stood on was scorching hot, but the tops of the mountains he was staring at were covered with silvery white snow. On the other side of the mountain range that Yang Kai couldn't see yet, it should be extremely cold. This was obviously the Two Seasons mountain range. While releasing his divine sense to monitor his surroundings, Yang Kai didn't hesitate as he flew straight into the mountain range. In the forest, the climate was hot and humid, but for cultivators like Yang Kai, this did not affect him much. Recalling the information recorded on the map in his mind, and as far as possible trying not to deviate from his destination of the realm of winter, Yang Kai began searching for the existence of the Flowing Time Temple. His thoughts were quite simple. Since the existence of the Flowing Time Temple was elusive, and no one had found it since the Four Seasons realm had first appeared, Yang Kai naturally wouldn't hold too much hope of finding it either, and was not planning to expend much energy in his search. For him, it would be good to find it, but it didn't matter if he couldn't. After spending a brief time here, he would cross the Two Seasons mountain range and enter the realm of winter. The tribulation fruit was his biggest goal on this trip. With such a mentality, Yang Kai relaxed while using the wooden ship to fly at a low altitude. In this mountain forest, there seemed to be some traces of monster beast activity, but their strength shouldn't be too great. Yang Kai didn't even bother to find trouble with these monster beasts, and was content to just ignore them. Occasionally, 1 or 2 rare herbs could be found, which were carefully collected by Yang Kai and transplanted to the medicine garden in his sealed world bead. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed, and although no traces of the Flowing Time Temple were found, it was not without gains. At a certain moment, just as Yang Kai was flying forward leisurely and surveying his surroundings, his expression changed as he suddenly looked up in a certain direction. From that direction, 2 entities were swiftly approaching, one closer, one further. It seemed that something was fleeing while something was pursuing, but because of the obstruction of the jungle, Yang Kai was unable to see anything clearly. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai immediately noticed an aura on par with a second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator approaching him. At this moment, the owner of this aura seemed to have been severely injured and their energy fluctuations were extremely unstable. Just as Yang Kai was investigating, a monster beast suddenly jumped out of the jungle before him. This monster beast was like a giant lizard, with a forked tongue and a long body. It had 2 fiery red wings on its back as well as a diamond-shaped mark on its head, like a brand, which seemed quite strange and out of place. Yang Kai did not know who it fought against, a cultivator or another monster beast, but at this moment, one of its wings was cut and its tail was missing. Blood leaked from all of its wounds. As it leapt into the air, it panicked as it obviously didn't expect Yang Kai to appear in its way. However, in the blink of an eye, the giant lizard pounced towards Yang Kai with its red eyes and mouth wide open. Yang Kai only saw a scarlet light shoot out towards him in the next instant. Clearly, the giant lizard had used its long scarlet tongue like a spear to pierce towards him. Swiftly, Yang Kai's figure flashed and he moved aside, causing the long tongue attack to hit empty space. At the same time, Yang Kai flicked his wrist and sent out dozens of moon blades towards the giant lizard. The giant lizard was mid-air and could not avoid the attack of these moon blades and was directly hit. The giant lizard's body seemed quite robust, so the moon blades that Yang Kai hurriedly shot out did not kill it immediately, instead just causing some of its skin to flay, resulting in minor injuries. However, the force from the moon blades made it fall straight down. Yang Kai's expression looked grim as he shot downwards like a meteor, following after the giant lizard as he aimed for the top of its head. As he fell, Yang Kai used his dragon transformation secret technique, transforming his right fist into a thick dragon claw which he slammed down on the giant lizard's head. Honk! With a loud bang, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, the giant lizard's body folded awkwardly at its neck and its scarlet tongue spat out. Its eyes went bloodshot as it convulsed and struggled momentarily before going stiff. With a thud, the corpse of the giant lizard fell to the ground, and Yang Kai lightly landed by its side. This giant lizard was an 11th order monster beast, comparable to a cultivator at the 2nd order Dao Source realm. If it hadn't already been seriously injured, Yang Kai wouldn't have been able to kill it in such a short time. It didn't look like a valuable monster beast, but because of its high level, its monster core should be worth a lot. Thinking so, Yang Kai bent down and prepared to extract its core. But at that moment, a sudden change occurred as the diamond-shaped brand on the giant lizard's forehead suddenly lit up, like it had a life of its own. Transforming into a stream of light, it shot out and rushed towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai was shocked as he backed away in a hurry. He thought the giant lizard was already dead, so he wasn't expecting it to use such a strange method. An 11th order monster beast would have a high degree of sentience, so it could have had a few tricks to use. Yang Kai's movements were fast, but the stream of light was faster, so he couldn't avoid it. Instantly, the stream of light broke through his defensive source chi and landed on the back of his hand. "What is this?" Yang Kai looked horrified as he exclaimed. The moment that the stream of light landed, he felt a scorching pain from the back of his hand, as if a soldering iron was branding him, causing him to further back off. But soon, he found that he was thinking too much. The pain lasted for only a moment before it was replaced with a cold, pleasant sensation. When he looked down, Yang Kai found that there was now a diamond-shaped mark on the back of his right hand, exactly the same as the one he saw on the giant lizard's forehead. Xiao! In the next moment, several figures suddenly appeared not far from Yang Kai. When these people appeared, they all cast their eyes on the giant lizard's corpse that was lying on the ground before turning to Yang Kai with grim faces. Yang Kai was surprised by this whole situation. When he noticed that the giant lizard was severely injured, he vaguely guessed that someone was chasing after it, but having been disturbed by this diamond-shaped mark, he had forgotten that others were approaching him. Now he found that it was too late to react. "It's you! It's you!" Looking at Yang Kai, there were two exclamations at once, but their tones were very different. Yang Kai looked up and felt a headache coming on, because he discovered that the situation in front of him was slightly complicated. The cultivators chasing the giant lizard were not all from a great force, but rather belonged to 4 different groups. Among the 4 groups of people, he knew half of them. On the left side, there were 2 people, Xiao Bai and Murong Xiao Xiao from Azure Sun Temple. Yang Kai didn't know if they had been traveling together from the start, or if they had met up sometime later. When they were being chased by the flame beast in the realm of summer, the two should have separated, but now they had appeared together in the 2 Seasons mountain range. At this moment, Xiao Bai was looking at Yang Kai without much enthusiasm, and even some coldness, while Murong Xiao Xiao smiled sweetly at him. Next to these 2 people was Heavenly Martial Holy Land's Wu Chang, with his yin-yang dual body. Regarding this guy, Yang Kai had a vivid memory. After seeing the fight between him and Xiaxia, Yang Kai secretly decided not to have any disputes with this person unless absolutely necessary. Not because he was afraid of him, but because he would definitely be difficult to deal with, and Yang Kai figured he would need to pay a high price to beat him. Yang Kai believed that even if he used all of his trump cards, he may not be able to kill Wu Chang. From Heavenly Martial Holy Land, only Wu Chang was present. This was not surprising, though. Wu Chang had a violent and off-putting personality even towards his fellow brothers, so getting along with him was definitely not an easy task. The disciples of Heavenly Martial Holy Land probably didn't want to be with him any more than Wu Chang wanted to be with them. To him, everyone was a burden. The third group consisted of 2 people, a man and a woman. The man was handsome, and the woman was beautiful, the former possessing a 3rd-order Dao Source Realm cultivation, while the latter was only 1st order. Yang Kai didn't know who these two were, but what made him feel strange was that when the man looked at him, his eyes were a little gloomy. Meanwhile, the woman just smiled lightly at him. Judging from the emblems on their robes, this man and the woman were likely disciples of Star Soul Palace, so neither of them was to be underestimated. Lastly, like Wu Chang, there was another lone man. Yang Kai took a look at him and found that this man did not seem to be from a big sect. The emblem on his clothes was unfamiliar, so he probably came from some medium or small-sized force. But this guy, even when he was facing the elites of 3 major sects, was undaunted, his expression extremely calm, a surprising display. Does this sister know me? Yang Kai wondered as he glanced towards the young woman from Star Soul Palace. Of the 2 voices that had called out just now, one of them was Xiao Bai, while the other was actually this woman. Why would she shout something like that if she did not know me? But what Yang Kai didn't expect was that the female disciple just smiled slightly, shook her head, and said, "I mistook you for someone else." Lan Sun said this because although she remembered Yang Kai's appearance, he naturally would not recognize her. That time in the 3rd layer of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, Lan Sun was using her false face bead to change her appearance. So what Yang Kai had seen was not her true appearance. Yang Kai was speechless, but quickly composed himself and turned to Xiao Bai. "Xiao Bai, you're here as well, huh? The world is really too small." Blue veins bulged on Xiao Bai's forehead as he snapped, "Do you want to die?" Morong Xiao Xiao pursed her lips, smiled, and slightly nodded at Yang Kai. Yang Kai said, "Why are you acting so indifferently? It's rare for everyone to meet here." "Ah, it must be destiny." Xiao Bai coldly snorted. "Who wants to share destiny with you? But it is unexpected and somewhat impressive that you could escape the pursuit of the flame beast." Although he had given a compliment, it was filled with ridicule and sarcasm. At that time, the flame beast from the realm of summer had been hopping mad, and despite there being so many people fleeing from it, it had chosen to focus on Yang Kai. So many had thought Yang Kai was doomed to die. Even Xiao Bai thought so. After all, even Wu Chang had been forced to flee from this monster beast. So how could Yang Kai, a first-order Dao source realm, survive? But now, Yang Kai appeared unscathed in the 2 Seasons mountain range. A true surprise. Hearing the words flame beast, the expressions of the man and a woman from Star Soul Palace also changed slightly. Obviously, from their sex records, they knew about the existence of this monster beast which was comparable to an Emperor Realm cultivator. Wu Chang also raised his brows, revealing a look of surprise. He couldn't understand how such a weak cultivator could escape from the pursuit of the flame beast. During the previous incident, if the group from Azure Sun Temple had not attracted the flame beast's attention, he would have been in big trouble. "It's nothing much." Yang Kai put on a humble look. "Fleeing just happens to be my strong point." When he spoke these words, rather than looking ashamed, he instead appeared rather proud of himself, causing Xiao Bai to stare at him for some time. Enough nonsense. At that moment, the unknown young man wearing dark robes from an unknown sect interrupted with a shout before coldly shouted at Yang Kai, "Hand over that star seal or die." From his tone, he kindly wanted to let Yang Kai leave as long as Yang Kai cooperated. Facing such an arrogant and domineering request, which was made so naturally, Yang Kai couldn't help turning and staring. The other party just stared back at him coldly, without the slightest intention of avoiding his gaze. The pair from Star Soul Palace didn't interfere, and although the handsome man frowned somewhat unhappily, the young woman's beautiful eyes lit up with interest, as if waiting to watch a good show. "Although it's a bit late now, I still want to ask, how should I address Your Excellency?" Yang Kai looked at the youth with a smile, not showing any anger on the surface. While speaking, he had already sent a message into the small sealed world to ask Hua Qingxi to help him identify the man and woman from Star Soul Palace. After all, Star Soul Palace was her sect, so she should recognize these 2 people. The dark-clothed youth coldly snorted and replied, "Eight Paths Sect, Luo Yuan. So, it was Brother Luo. I've long heard of and admired you. It seems I've been quite disrespectful." Yang Kai put on a look of surprise, as if he had really heard of him before when in fact, he hadn't even heard of 8 Paths Sect. The The contempt and disdain on Xiao Baiyi's face grew markedly as he snorted. Fortunately, you're not one of my Azure Sun Temple's disciples. Otherwise, I would have already taken action to clean up the sect. Hee hee. Yang Kai laughed before his expression suddenly twitched slightly. At that moment, he obtained an answer from Hua Qingxi from his embodiment. Unexpectedly, this pair from Star Soul Palace had incredible backgrounds. That man was the son of Xiao Yuyang Xiao Chen. Xiao Yuyang had a powerful second-order Emperor realm cultivation and held the post of a Star Soul Palace Silver Star envoy, making him famous across the entire southern territory. Could be said that a tiger father begets no dogs. Xiao Yuyang was powerful and respected, so his son naturally was not mediocre. He, Wu Chang, Xiaoshang, Zhuang Bufan, and a few others were considered the top rising stars of the southern territory. Xiao Chen's background was powerful and impressive, but the young woman's background was far scarier. She was actually the one and only gem of the Bright Moon Great Emperor, Princess Lan Sun. She was the most sought-after woman for young bachelors in the entire Southern Territory, possibly even the entire star boundary. If such a woman were to marry into one's house, that house would undoubtedly prosper for 1,000 years. With the Bright Moon Great Emperor as a father-in-law, a man could walk sideways across the entire star boundary. Who would dare to despise or provoke such an existence? But, although Princess Lan Sun's status was unrivaled, she rarely appeared outside, hence ordinary cultivators would never get a chance to see her. Yang Kai hadn't expected that with her identity and status, Lan Sun would come to the Four Seasons realm for life experience, much less with a cultivation only equal to his own. Is the Bright Moon Great Emperor not afraid of what might happen to his precious daughter in the Four Seasons realm? Thinking up to here, Yang Kai glanced at Xiao Chen again. With this flower protector present, any danger would have to get past him first before it touched Lan Sun. These thoughts flashed across Yang Kai's mind, and while everyone caught his expression change slightly, none of them knew what he was thinking about. They only thought that he was frightened by Xiao Baiyi's words, causing them to further despise him. Yang Kai lowered his gaze to the diamond-shaped brand on the back of his hand and muttered to himself, "So this thing really is a star seal?" Just now, he had some faint speculations that this thing was an entry pass to the Shattered Star Sea, but Wu Chang and the others had appeared before he could sort out his thoughts or verify it in any way. Fortunately, Luo Yuan's words confirmed his guess for him. The star seal had actually appeared on the forehead of a monster beast, so after it was killed by Yang Kai, it had been transferred to his hand, and in such an obvious position, it was unlikely that Yang Kai could avoid trouble in this situation. Adjusting himself, he suddenly called out to Wu Chang, "Brother Wu Chang, you and the others are future leaders of the Southern Territory. Are you really going to let some unknown little man from a small sect act so arrogant and presumptuous in front of you? If word of this were to spread out, what face would Brother Wu Chang have left?" Wu Chang looked at Yang Kai indifferently and remained unmoved. Although he had a short temper and a violent personality, he had cultivated to the third-order Dao Source realm, so he was no fool. How could he not see that Yang Kai was trying to sow discord to alleviate his own situation? Wu Chang just coldly snorted and replied, "Although I don't like this guy's arrogance, I agree with his sentiment. Hand over the star seal, otherwise, I'll take it myself." Yang Kai heard this, scratched his head involuntarily and said, "So, what the two of you are saying is that you are going to rob me?" At this point, he looked over at Lan Sun and Xiao Chan and asked, "Is your Star Soul Palace also going to participate in this affair?" Lan Sun smiled slightly and said, "I'm afraid I can't do anything to help you, but I can at least guarantee that I won't rob you." Xiao Chan didn't speak and just coldly snorted. The contempt in his eyes grew even stronger as he couldn't understand why Princess Lan Sun seemed to care about this unknown man. Moreover, the words that Yang Kai spoke just now made him aware of some problems as well. With Lan Sun making her position clear, Yang Kai could only sigh helplessly and say, "If it were possible, I would be happy to hand over this star seal, but I don't know how to get it off the back of my hand. Do you two have any suggestions?" "It's simple," Wu Chang answered immediately in a calm tone. "Cut off your hand." "Good." Luo Yuan nodded. "Your hand or your life? Choose." Yang Kai paled in fright as he shouted, I want both. Is there any other way that's safer? Luo Yuan coldly snorted. How could there be such a cheap bargain in this world? It seems that you don't want either. Good. Then I'll make the decision for you. Saying so, he pushed his source chi, took a step forward, and rapidly closed in on Yang Kai. A golden light condensed on his palm as he slammed it towards Yang Kai's chest. As soon as Luo Yan made a move, Wu Chang also moved. Now that the star seal was on the back of Yang Kai's hand, whoever killed him first would obtain it. With Wu Chang's arrogant and proud temperament, how could he tolerate Luo Yuan seizing the advantage? So, he suddenly appeared behind Yang Kai, his hand turning pure white and exuding an extreme chill as he punched towards Yang Kai's back. The two third-order Dao Source Realm Masters were merciless in their attacks, both wanting to swiftly kill their prey, not even caring about how they appeared in front of the others present. After all, the star seal would transfer to whoever killed the current carrier, so they needed to act fast. Junior brother Yang. Morong Xiao Zhao's pretty face paled as she exclaimed, "Quickly run!" Xiao Baiyi also frowned. He hadn't expected Wu Chang and Luo Yuan to act so decisively and ruthlessly, attacking with full intent to kill. Although he didn't like Yang Kai, and he even said that he would teach him a lesson in the Four Seasons realm, it was still true that Yang Kai had entered the Four Seasons realm together with Azure Sun Temple. Since he had occupied one of Azure Sun Temple's entry quotas, any extra star seals Yang Kai obtained would be handed over to the temple. If for no other reason than this, Xiao Baiyi couldn't sit back and watch Yang Kai be killed in front of him. Otherwise, once an investigation occurred, he wouldn't be able to feign ignorance or remain uninvolved. Although Yang Kai's death was of no importance to him, whether he lived or died would affect the sect's interests. Unfortunately, by the time Xiao Baiyi reacted, it was too late to intervene. On the other hand, Lan Sun's pretty face also changed slightly, showing a slightly disappointed look. In her opinion, Yang Kai would definitely die, and she couldn't save him, otherwise she would be deeply offending Wu Chang. Overconfidence. Xiao Chun just let out a cold snort as he watched from the side. Honk. With a loud bang, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan, who had sandwiched Yang Kai with their attacks from the front and back, both showed stunned expressions. The two felt a huge impact force at the same time and were both involuntarily forced back a couple dozen meters before they managed to stabilize themselves. Somewhere in the Two Seasons mountain range, a strange tension hung in the air. Both Luo Yuan and Wu Chang wore shocked expressions at this moment. Xiao Baiyi and Morong Xiao were also staring dumbfounded at the scene before them. Nearby, Lan Sun was also surprised as her eyes flashed brightly, while even Xiao Chun muttered in confusion, "What's going on?" Two rising stars, Luo Yuan and Wu Chang, had attacked Yang Kai at the same time, causing everyone to believe that Yang Kai would die. Wu Chang alone was not an ordinary Dao Source Realm cultivator, and regardless of whether Luo Yan was all bark and no bite, or he really had the strength to back up his arrogance, he was still a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Wu Chang also had a fierce reputation as a violent individual, so there was no one who met a good end when they were targeted by him. And now, these two had attacked Yang Kai simultaneously without warning, leaving no way for him to avoid them at all. Everyone was certain they would be witnessing the miserable scene of Yang Kai's death, but instead, it was Luo Yuan and Wu Chang, the sneak attackers, who were sent flying while Yang Kai showed no signs of injury. How did he do it? Recalling that moment, Yang Kai seemed to have just stood still without moving. Now, though, his face had gone pale, and his expression was flustered as if he was quite frightened, his body trembling slightly and his forehead covered in sweat. Although he looked a little embarrassed, he was completely unscathed. "Little brat, what did you just do?" Xiao Chun couldn't understand. It was impossible for Luo Yuan and Wu Chang to be repelled for no reason. The only explanation was that Yang Kai had secretly used some amazing method to save himself, but no one had seen clearly what that method was. Xiao Chen's brow was furrowed tightly as he secretly felt that something was off about Yang Kai. Interesting. Lan Sun's beautiful eyes shined brightly as she stared at Yang Kai somewhat cheerfully. Although she was only a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator herself, she was the bright moon Great Emperor's precious gem, and she had inherited his special constitution. Since she was a child, she had been fascinated with the strength of her father, so in terms of experience, insight, and vision, she stood above everyone else present. Although she didn't see too clearly what happened, she still had some understanding of what transpired. Just now, when Luo Yuan and Wu Chang attacked and were about to hit Yang Kai, Lan Xun clearly saw his body turn illusory for a moment, like he had disappeared from this world. At the same time, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan's attacks lost their target. Losing their target, the two attacks naturally collided with each other. In other words, it was Wu Chang's attack that pushed back Luo Yuan, and it was Luo Yuan's attack that pushed back Wu Chang. It was as if the two had fought each other. What a strange secret technique! Lan Xun's beautiful eyes lit up as she glanced over at Luo Yuan, silently thinking to herself. He's also a bit unusual, able to match Wu Chang in a single exchange. Since when did such a monster appear in the Eight Paths sect? It seems that what Lord Father told me was right. Never underestimate anyone. Even people from humble backgrounds could have a bright and lofty future. This Luo Yuan is the most obvious example. And now there's also this strange guy. He is definitely not as cowardly as he makes himself look to be. Even his previous cowardly display must have been a pretense. Only these smelly men with muscles for brains could have really believed that this was his true personality. Alright, what was his name again? All sorts of distracting thoughts flashed through Lan Xun's mind. Believing that Yang Kai was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, she couldn't help but cast an interested look at Yang Kai, who was still shivering midair, a playful expression soon appearing on her face as if she had already seen through him. Finally, Wu Chang recovered from his shock and took a glance at Yang Kai before turning to Luo Yan and threatening, "Are you courting death?" Even though he hadn't clearly understood how Yang Kai had avoided his attack, after just a bit of thought, he was able to roughly figure out what had happened. With his arrogant personality, which looked down on everyone else, he naturally blamed Luo Yuan for what just transpired. It was as though Luo Yuan had interfered with his good deed and allowed Yang Kai to use his secret technique to resolve his crisis. Me? Yang Kai looked panicked and pointed at himself as he hurriedly asked, "Are you talking about me? I don't want to die. Please don't kill me." While he was talking, he turned towards Xiao Bai and called out, "Xiao Bai, please reason with Brother Wu Chang. Have him spare me. Okay?" Xiao Bai glared at him and grit his teeth as he snapped, "I really want to rush over and kill you myself." Fortunately, Yang Kai was not a disciple of Azure Sun Temple. Otherwise, Xiao Bai really would find himself in an embarrassing position. It was nothing less than shameful for a sect to have such a sniveling disciple. Xiao Bai secretly hated that he hadn't seen through Yang Kai's true nature before. Otherwise, he would never have agreed to give Shui Yi's entry quota to Yang Kai. Even Murong Xiao Xiao, who was standing next to him, cast a disapproving look at Yang Kai. "Do you want to fight? I will give you a fight." Luo Yuan's gaze also crossed through Yang Kai and landed on Wu Chang, his voice filled with a faint eagerness, clearly indicating he was not afraid of Wu Chang. Actually, deep in his heart, he couldn't wait to fight Wu Chang and prove his strength. And so, oddly enough, they both began to ignore Yang Kai entirely. "Bold!" Wu Chang grinned, a look that could almost be described as happy appearing on his face. "It's been a long time since I met an interesting guy like you." As he spoke, he actually licked his lips, like a hungry predator or a pervert that had suddenly encountered a naked beauty. The eyes of the two met midair and sparks seemed to fly, causing the atmosphere to become tense. Yang Kai was standing between the two of them, and although he was being ignored, he still had to bear the pressure from both of them, turning his face paler by the moment. Ooh! Even the swirling wind seemed to be contaminated with murderous intent, sending chills up the spines of the onlookers. Enough! Seeing that Luo Yuan and Wu Chang were about to fight, Lan Xun really couldn't stand it anymore, and after calling out lightly, she stepped forward and said, "Both of you are geniuses from my southern territory. In the future, you should not become so agitated over such minor matters." Before entering this sealed world, Uncle Xiao had said he hoped everyone would put the overall situation first. Our opponents are not each other, but rather those from the other territories. Please give me some face and exchange weapons of war for gifts of jade and silk. Hearing this, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan frowned at the same time. They didn't expect that Princess Lan Xun would come forward to mediate at this moment. Although they were a little unhappy in their hearts, the two of them didn't dare refuse Princess Lan Xun. It might be fine in the short term to offend Lan Xun here, but once the Four Seasons realm closed and rumors began to spread, even their own sex wouldn't dare to shelter them from reprisals. Since the princess has said so, the two of you should stop, otherwise this Xiao will become your enemy. Xiao Chun also stood forward, fulfilling his role as the princess protector. Lucky you. Wu Chang and Luo Yuan uttered these words at the same time before they withdrew their fighting intent. Wu Chang glanced at Luo Yuan briefly before he spoke to Lan Xun. Your Highness, this time, this Wu will give you face and not care about him. But if there is a next time, even if the great emperor himself was here, I will still kill this waste that does not know the immensity of heaven and earth. In his eyes, besides a few exceptions, everyone was a waste. He didn't even put the elite disciples of Azure Sun Temple or Orthodoxy Temple in his eyes. So how could he care about Luo Yuan from Eight Paths sect? If it weren't for Lan Xun's interference, he wouldn't have endured being provoked by such a nobody. I've heard about heavenly martial holy lands Wu Chang for a long time now, but it seems all that's strong about him is his tongue. Luo Yuan was not someone who would take such provocation quietly, so he immediately leveled an insult of his own. Good. Good. Lan Xun also secretly felt a headache coming on. If you really were fighting over some rare and precious treasure, I would not bother to stop you, but for a mere star seal, it's not worth it. There are many more such star seals in the Four Seasons realm, and there is plenty of time before this sealed world closes, so everyone will have many opportunities to acquire them. While speaking, she also glanced at the back of Yang Kai's hand and commented, What's more, this is just a trivial diamond star seal. It's not worth fighting over. What? Do star seals have different ranks? Yang Kai immediately latched onto some information Lan Xun's words revealed and asked in surprise. Why are you still running your mouth? Xiao Qin glanced at him indifferently and sarcastically said, You've just managed to survive a brush with death, so you should hurry up and run away with your tail tucked between your legs. What are you still doing here? Waiting for death. Hee hee. The corners of Yang Kai's mouth twitched in response as he wore an embarrassed expression. He turned his gaze to Xiao Baiyi as he wanted to ask about the specific situation of the star seals. But he couldn't as Xiao Baiyi directly turned his gaze away, refusing to communicate with him. Yang Kai suddenly felt depressed. But looking at Xiao Baiyi acting like this, it was obvious he knew something. However, this information was probably of the same level of importance as the existence of the Flowing Time Temple, a secret of the sect, so it wouldn't be convenient for Xiao Baiyi to reveal it. To the side, Murong Xiao Xiao showed an apologetic expression to Yang Kai. Yang Kai understood and did not ask anything more. Good. Now that this star seal has a master, please put its existence aside and no longer think about it. Lan Xun's words concluded this minor event, which could also be regarded as her covertly helping Yang Kai. With these words said, as long as anyone cared about Lan Xun's face and identity, they would no longer try to snatch Yang Kai's star seal. Although Wu Chang and Luo Yuan were warlike and rebellious, they still needed to give her face. After her words were finished, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan glanced at each other across the air, their eyes meeting and conveying the same silent message. Don't let me run into you again, or you will regret it. Immediately, the two snorted coldly before turning their backs to one another and preparing to leave. But at that moment, a sudden change occurred. From the depths of the Two Seasons mountain range, a strange shockwave erupted, bringing with it the sound of muffled thunder while shaking the earth below everyone's feet. Everyone's complexion changed as they turned and looked around suspiciously, completely befuddled. Things did not end there though, and soon an exclamation sounded out. Look over there, up in the sky. It was Murong Xiao Xiao who was talking. At this moment, she looked up at the sky while pointing her finger upwards. Her small mouth opened slightly, with a surprised expression. Following the direction she was pointing at, everyone looked up, dumbfounded. They saw a stream of light piercing the sky, like a meteorite falling from the sky, creating gorgeous arcs, falling in a certain direction. At first, there were only a few streams, but soon the number of streams increased. At first glance, it looked like a meteor shower. Star seals. Lan Sun was shocked and screamed, "So many star seals? What?" Xiao Chun, hearing this, was taken aback. "Princess, are you sure those are all star seals?" Lan Sun stared at the sky. It was unknown what kind of secret technique she was using, but there was a flash of light in her eyes as she nodded lightly. "There is no mistake. Those are all star seals." Her voice fell, and there was a small humph from the side. Everyone looked around and saw Wu Chang's entire body turn into a red and white flash of light, flying in the direction where the star seals were falling. He was quick to seize the opportunity. As soon as he heard that the things that fell from the sky were star seal, he immediately acted. Behind him was Luo Yuan. "Let's go." Xiao Baiyi naturally was not slow to react, as he prompted in a soft but low voice. Thus, he and Morong Xiao hurried to catch up. They had been in the Four Seasons realm for 2 or 3 days, and they only encountered a single star seal in the Two Seasons mountain range. That star seal had been branded on the forehead of a monster beast which they had severely injured before it ran away. After they caught up to it, they unexpectedly found all their effort just ended up being an opportunity for Yang Kai to easily pick it up, as though it had been ordered for him. This resulted in Luo Yuan and Wu Chang almost fighting over it. With so many star seals appearing, even if everyone present divided them equally amongst themselves, it would still be enough for each person to receive 6 or 7 star seals. A star seal meant a voucher to enter Shattered Star Sea, which was of great significance to any sect. How could Xiao Baiyi and Morong Xiao dare be negligent? "Princess?" Seeing everyone fly off as swift as the wind, Xiao Chen suddenly became anxious. "Let's go too." Lan Sun naturally did not wish to miss such an opportunity and replied immediately. Xiao Chen nodded, then joined with Lan Sun and flew towards the star seals as well. However, as soon as the two set off, a boat-like flight-type artifact appeared alongside them. Lan Sun turned her head and saw Yang Kai calmly standing on the wooden boat, with an emotionless expression, with the wind whipping his black hair back. Lan Sun could not help but sneer. After all, at this moment, Yang Kai's image was vastly different from the cowardly and timid persona he gave before, and it seemed that he wanted to attract her attention. She understood Yang Kai's approach very well. Basically, few men could maintain their nature in front of her. Those people always tried to vie for her attention as if they could get some satisfaction from it. "Ha!" Xiao Chun coldly snorted with a displeased expression. Xiao Chun had long been displeased by Yang Kai, and at this moment, this guy was still shamelessly pretending to be cool. It was simply unbearable. Yang Kai did not seem to notice what Xiao Chun was thinking. So, he continued to act casual while pretending to be puzzled, and rushed to Lan Sun and asked, "Hey, why would this friend by your side call you a princess? Is that your name or something? Whose name would carry the word princess?" Lan Sun lightly smiled, shook her head before reassuring, "You think too much. Then, I don't understand." Yang Kai shook his head. "I think your temperament is extraordinary and elegant. You are obviously from a noble background. However, what does that have to do with princess? Hey, can't you help me understand?" Lan Sun frowned and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. She couldn't tell Yang Kai that she was the daughter of the Bright Moon Great Emperor. That's why she was called a princess. It was a bit braggy to say it, though it was true. She could only ask back, "I came from Star Soul Palace. Can't you make a guess?" To her, it was obvious. As long as someone had a bit of common sense, after hearing this sentence, they should be able to come to a conclusion, so she would avoid the need to answer. But to her surprise, Yang Kai thought for a while, and solemnly shook his head. Yang Kai's ignorance made Xiao Chun on the side roll his eyes. He could not help but coldly snort. "Star Soul Palace is a sect created by the Bright Moon Great Emperor. And this one in front of you is the jewel of the Great Emperor." "Ha!" Yang Kai was shocked and hesitated. "So you are the daughter of the Great Emperor." He looked extremely shocked. "Who my parents are doesn't mean anything." Lan Sun smiled slightly and seemed more approachable. Meanwhile, Xiao Chen cursed. Where did this frog come from? To think you've never heard of the name of our princess, but still managed to enter the Four Seasons realm. You are simply an embarrassment for the people of our generation. Princess, you should avoid interacting with this person. Xianxia, embarrassed, explained. I used to cultivate deep in the mountains, and I just came out for experience not long ago. So I don't know much about things of the outside world. Heh, I don't know much, but I have at least heard of the name Bright Moon Great Emperor. So, Lan Sun did not really know what to believe and expressed the same confusion. It looks like you are the kind of cultivator who enters long retreats and cultivates really hard. It's normal if you don't know much about the outside world. Princess, you are too polite. I'm just ignorant and uninformed. Xianxia scratched his cheek and said modestly. At least you still have a bit of self-awareness. Xiaochun continued. By the way, what is your name? Lan Sun asked. Xiaochun immediately cut in. Princess, why are you asking about this frog's name? Don't smear your ears. What's wrong with just asking? Lan Sun frowned, apparently not wishing to be so close to Xiaochun. If it weren't for the Bright Moon Great Emperor, her father, ordering her, she wouldn't be with Xiaochun now. She preferred to act alone. For her, nothing was more joyous than having her own adventure. The excitement and unknown danger continued to stir her desire, making her unable to stop. I'm Xianxia. Lan Sun nodded, suddenly showing a smile. I have something I am uncertain about. I don't know if Brother Yang would be able to enlighten me? Xianxia's eyes flickered, and he chuckled. If the princess has any questions, please say so. This Yang will do his best to answer. Lan Sun warned. Brother Yang, you can't speak so frivolously. The question I ask might be related to your secrets. Humph. I just wanted to catch your attention. I'm afraid any man who wants to be with you would be willing to answer anything just to get you to have a good impression of him. After all, this little girl would not settle with just anyone. Xianxia thought in his heart, faintly guessing what exactly Lan Sun wanted to ask. So, there he was not afraid of the question. Princess, if you are asking me something, it means that you are already giving me a lot of face. What can't I say? As soon as this remark came out, Xiaochun had a bad feeling. Although this little brat named Xianxia was a wild brat that just recently came out of a forest in the deep mountains, he seemed to be well versed with the heart of women. He had just met the princess and they hit it off so well. How could this be tolerated? Worst of all, the princess, who was known to be scornful to men, had been dealing with this frog with a smile on her face. Xiaochun felt a sense of crisis in his heart, so he immediately cast a threatening look at Xianxia, as if to say, I dare you to continue speaking to her. Due to his position with Lan Sun and the angle, it was impossible for Lan Sun to notice his gaze. Meanwhile, it was well within Xianxia's field of vision. However, Xianxia did not even spare him a glance. It was as though he was completely fascinated by Lan Sun. His whole view was only on the princess. Xiaochun felt a sense of powerlessness as he clenched his fist. Those two attacked you earlier. How did you manage to come out unscathed? Lan Sun asked bluntly. Indeed, as she said, this question was definitely related to Xianxia's secret. A first-order Dao Source Realm that could come out unscathed under the attack of two third-order Dao Source Realm cultivators. It must have been a powerful secret technique. Such a powerful secret technique would normally be kept under wraps, never spoken of casually. So as soon as Lan Sun asked, Xianxia immediately showed a look of embarrassment. He smiled and stammered. Haha, actually, it's fine. There is no need to speak of it. Just forget that I asked anything. Lan Sun said. Xianxia sounded off. It was as if he was willing to share, but the stammering meant that it was still something he would rather not do. If Xianxia had been completely infatuated by Lan Sun at this moment, would he hesitate? How could a man who was thinking with his nether region possibly refuse to answer a question from his beloved? Under those circumstances, even if the man did not wish to speak, he would still speak. Xianxia sighed, it's not that I can't say it, but... At this point, he suddenly put on a solemn expression. At the same time, he lowered his voice. Princess, you have to keep it a secret for me. If rumors of this secret technique were to spread, it will no longer work. I am afraid I will die next time I encounter this kind of situation. While he was talking, he deliberately moved towards Lan Xun and almost pressed his lips to her ear. A scent of fragrance immediately lingered on the tip of his nose. The two were too close. Lan Xun did not move to avoid him, but her delicate ears suddenly turned red. What are you doing? Seeing this scene, Xiao Chun could not bear it and started shouting aloud. He immediately pointed the sharp sword in his hand at Yang Kai. Yang Kai was taken aback and quickly moved away from her. With an innocent look on his face, he asked, I didn't do anything. This friend, what is the meaning of this? You just... Xiao Chun wanted to explain but could not go on. After all, even though Yang Kai was a little closer to Lan Xun, he really did not do anything. If he really wanted to pursue this, he would seem too jealous. So he could only give a warning. Just stand there and speak. If you dare to lean in again, I will take your head. Yang Kai said in amazement. This friend is really strange. Okay, then I will stand here and say it. Princess, please understand. My secret technique is called universe-shifting divine art. Once it is used, I can borrow my opponent's strength to defeat him. It's how we use the weak to defeat the strong. Take advantage of their strength? Lan Xun looked surprised. Yes. Yang Kai nodded solemnly and said in a serious tone, the two guys before both wanted to take my life, which is in line with the key points of universe-shifting divine art, so I just... Yang Kai grinned meaningfully, reached out and drew a semicircle, tweaked it a little bit and let them fight on their own. Lan Xun thoughtfully for a moment and asked, so, if only one person attacked you at that time, then I'd be dead. Yang Kai shrugged. There is such a mystical secret technique in this world? Lan Xun asked after listening to Yang Kai's explanation, which made her incredibly surprised. She was deeply knowledgeable and well-read. After all, she was the daughter of the Bright Moon Great Emperor and knew various secret techniques of the Star Soul Palace. Naturally, she could pick up whatever she wanted, but she had never heard anything like universe-shifting divine art before. However, the effectiveness of this secret technique was obvious to all. With the cultivation of First-Order Dao Source Realm, Yang Kai was unharmed under the attack of the two Third-Order Dao Source Realm Masters. This was nothing short of extraordinary. Naturally, she could not have known that there was no such thing called the universe-shifting divine art in this world. And Yang Kai had just used his Nihility secret technique at a critical moment to avoid being hit by hiding in the void. Princess, this secret technique, I've shared with you because I am grateful for before. However, you must not spread news of it. Yang Kai solemnly exhorted, as though asking Lan Xun to make an oath. Lan Xun could not help nodding, and at the same time, wondering if she should get this secret technique from Yang Kai. Although the conditions to activate the universe-shifting divine art were harsh, it was undeniably powerful. Could definitely save lives at critical moments. Suddenly, Yang Kai rubbed his hands again with an apologetic face. Princess, since I've answered one of your questions, can you answer one question for me? What do you want to ask? Before Lan Xun spoke, Xiao Chun immediately cut in with vigilance. I just want to ask about the star seal. What did you think I wanted to ask? Yang Kai looked at Xiao Chun innocently, as if he was deterred by his aura. Lan Xun pursed her lips and smiled. Brother Xiao Chun, why must you be so aggressive against him? Then, she turned to look at Yang Kai and asked, you want to ask about the classifications and grades of star seals, right? Yang Kai nodded repeatedly. The princess is really beautiful and intelligent. It is as though you can see right through my heart. Lan Xun smiled. She did not hide anything and with a serious expression, explained. The star seal's grading, so to speak, is more related to the shape of the star seal. The more complex the star seal, the higher the grade. For example, the diamond-shaped star seal on your hand should be considered a relatively inferior one. Below it is the triangular star seal, and on top of it is the pentagonal, five-pointed star seal. There is also a six-pointed, seven-pointed, and even nine-pointed star seal. Different star seals, other than the number of points they have, what are the differences? Yang Kai asked sincerely. The reason why he deliberately got close to Lan Xun was to inquire about the star seals. Even if he asked Xianxia about this, he should receive the same answer, but Lan Xun was the daughter of the great emperor. She might have had information that others did not know about. I don't know the specific difference. Lan Xun slowly shook her head. However, it is said that the higher the grade of the star seal, the more benefits one can get from Shattered Star Sea. We can only enter the Shattered Star Sea to find out. I see. Yang Kai muttered thoughtfully. Could not be said for certain that Lan Xun had revealed all the information she knew. However, she had answered most of Yang Kai's doubts, even if it was not a comprehensive explanation. Therefore, it was not good for Yang Kai to press for more answers. As they were talking, they had already arrived at the location. Around the area, cultivators were gathered in twos or threes, standing on the treetops of a forest, looking up at the sky, as if silently waiting for something. Seeing this, Yang Kai immediately jumped to the top of a tree and turned his head to look around. Wu Chang, Luo Yuan, Xiao Baiyi, and Murong Xiao Xiao, who set off before him, had all arrived. In addition, there are some other cultivators who were obviously attracted by the light show just now. Yang Kai did a rough scan around and found that there were at least a dozen people here. What's more, swooshing sounds could be constantly heard within the depths of the forest. It was obvious that more were coming. And in the sky, a huge cloud was slowly forming. It had a golden hue, as though the cloud was cast in gold. It was extremely dazzling and mysterious, especially since Yang Kai could faintly feel strange energy fluctuations from this golden cloud. Huh! As he was observing, he suddenly stopped his gaze and turned his attention to somewhere not too far away. Over there, a man and a woman were looking at him with a smile on their faces. Once their eyes met, the woman beckoned to Yang Kai. How unlucky! Yang Kai secretly cursed. Unfortunately, he could not pretend that he did not see them. After all, even if he did, they would come to him. In a flash, he jumped down from the treetop and went to where they were. Why are the two of you here? Yang Kai asked the two. These two were none other than Bian Yuqing and Ko Wu from Blue Feather Sect. Although Yang Kai had no grievances with them, their direct superior was none other than Wu Mengchuan. If possible, Yang Kai wanted to avoid having any contact with them. We were here, Bian Yuqing replied with a smile, reading between the lines. She was indicating that they were transported to the Two Seasons mountain range. Oh! Ko Wu's eyes lit up, staring at the back of Yang Kai's hand. Junior brother Yang actually managed to get a hold of a star seal? We should celebrate. The corner of Yang Kai's mouth twitched as he helplessly exclaimed. If it is possible, I don't want this thing. Junior brother Yang, what you are saying isn't true, right? Ko Wu teased. Yang Kai snorted. Look around and see how the others react after hearing what you've just said. You will know what I mean. Ko Wu looked around. His face suddenly sank. Because he found that the cultivators gathered here all cast their eyes on the back of Yang Kai's hand, with several of them having greedy, covetous eyes. Although several dozen star seals had appeared in the sky just now, so far, none of the cultivators present has obtained a star seal. The star seal was related to the credentials to enter the Shattered Star Sea. It was their main goal when entering the Four Seasons realm. Before they entered, every sect elder would have given at least 1,000 sermons to their disciples. To your best to compete for the star seals while ensuring your own safety. Ko Wu did not notice, so his voice was a little loud. This caused Yang Kai to become the focus of everyone's attention, and he could not help feeling a little guilty and uneasy. Bian Yuqing giggled. Her beautiful eyes scanned around for a second before staring at the man in front, as she spoke in a soft tone. If you don't want it, how about leaving it with me? What a beautiful way of thinking. Yang Kai coldly snorted. How merciless. Bian Yuqing stared at Yang Kai, biting her red lips. If I hadn't taken care of you in the past, do you think you would still be standing here today? Aren't you embarrassed to talk about what happened during that time? Yang Kai squinted at her, coldly snorting. If you didn't force me to stay in the Blue Feather Sect back then, I wouldn't have. Wouldn't have what? Bian Yuqing asked. Nothing. Yang Kai waved his hand. When he remembered that Wu Mengchuan had taught him the heaven-devouring battle law, he felt uneasy. Fortunately, he did not cultivate the secret art and instead gave it to the embodiment. As such, even if Wu Mengchuan had some kind of sinister plan, it would not harm him. Look at him, just like I had expected. He has a human's face but is still a beast at heart. He was acting so conscientious and innocent in front of the princess. But now, this beast is messing with a seductress. Not far away, Xiao Chun seized the opportunity and approached Lan Sun. He looked at Yang Kai contemptuously, while trying to discredit him. You just have to speak your mind. Why are you getting so close? Lan Sun flashed further away with disgust. I was afraid you won't be able to hear. After being avoided like the plague, Xiao Chun had a sullen expression. Meanwhile, his hatred of Yang Kai grew even more. Just now, Yang Kai had also approached the princess like this, but she did not react in such a manner. On the other hand, she quickly moved aside when it came to him. Xiao Chen's heart was filled with rage. I'm not deaf. Lan Sun coldly snorted. Her beautiful eyes looked forward as she spoke with suspicion. Anyways, what I want to know now is where all the star seals that have fallen have gone. Everyone here had been chasing the direction where the star seals fell. However, there were no traces of them here. Lan Sun couldn't help but wonder what was going on. Let me ask around. Xiao Chen immediately spoke up. After he said his piece, his eyes swept around and finally was fixed on a short man. This man was with two more people, a man and a woman. The three of them dressed similarly. Obviously, they were from the same sect. Their cultivation was not low, the highest being the short man Xiao Chun set his eyes on. He was in the third-order Dao Source realm. Meanwhile, the other man and woman were both in the second-order Dao Source realm. You! Come here! Xiao Chun pointed at the short man and shouted. The little man heard this, and looked around for a while, before pointing at himself suspiciously. Me! Yes, you! Xiao Chun said impatiently. After confirming that Xiao Chun was beckoning him, the short man could not help but have a change of expression. Meanwhile, the man and woman with him became nervous, wondering what Xiao Chun wanted to do with their senior. Before entering the Four Seasons realm, smaller sects and the elders of the families had already done a comprehensive investigation. They had already passed the names and portraits of the elites of the major sects to the hands of their disciples. This way, it was possible to avoid provoking such people. Therefore, even if the three have never met Xiao Chun himself, they would still know who he was. Seeing Xiao Chun beckoning him at this moment, the short man's heartbeat was like a drum. Although he was also in the third-order Dao Source realm, the same as Xiao Chun, he knew that if they were to fight against each other, he would be beheaded by Xiao Chun in an instant. This was the difference between their cultivation heritage and secret techniques. Despite his extreme reluctance, the short man flew slowly to Xiao Chun and Lan Sun. With an ugly smile on his face, he cupped his fists. Benevolent martial sex Jing Li greets Senior Xiao. May I ask what Senior Xiao requests of me? This one here will obey your orders. This short man named Jing Li gave a low bow. He was a lot older than Xiao Chun, and his cultivation was the same as Xiao Chun. However, it was more comfortable to address Xiao Chun as senior. Seeing him acting so humbly, Xiao Chen's expression eased and he asked with a smile, I ask you, how long have you been here? Jing Li replied, We arrived just slightly earlier than Sir. Then did you see those things that fell from the sky before and where they went? It seemed that most of them fell into the golden cloud and disappeared. Jing Li pointed to the billowing golden cloud up in the sky. They fell there. Xiao Chun raised his head up and frowned. With his cultivation and divine sense, he could naturally detect the unusual energy contained in the golden cloud. But he was unable to determine what kind of mysteries were hidden inside it. Xiao Chun couldn't help showing a look of embarrassment as he turned to Lan Sun and said, Princess? Lan Sun frowned slightly and spoke after a moment. Let's just observe for now. Although dozens of star seals had fallen into the golden cloud, rushing into this golden cloud without knowing what it was would be quite dangerous. Even someone like Wu Chong did not dare to act rashly, so it was obvious this was not a situation where the fastest had the advantage. While Xiao Chun was asking questions, Yang Kai kept his ears open and listened intently, so he heard Jing Li's answer. At this moment, He turned to Ko Wu with the inquiring gaze, the latter simply nodding lightly, indicating there was nothing wrong with what Jingli had said. At this moment, as everyone was standing around waiting, others had already rushed over from all directions. Most of these people had been active nearby and were attracted by the vision of so many star seals falling from the sky. Originally, there were only about a dozen people present, but in short order, that number doubled. With so many people gathered together, all cultivators naturally became vigilant of one another, causing the atmosphere to become tense and treacherous. However, this lull did not last long. After about a cup of tea worth of time, a hum suddenly sounded from the golden cloud tumbling in the sky. This sound was thunderous and seemed to herald the birth of something inside the golden cloud. This caused many cultivators present to focus their gazes in shock and anxiety. Beams of golden light shot out as the golden cloud tumbled even more fiercely. Soon, a vague, giant shadow emerged within the golden light. As soon as this huge shadow appeared, everyone felt a solemn atmosphere tumbling down, as if whatever had manifested was about to show its true form. With the appearance of this shadow, the golden cloud in the sky churned and distorted before it slowly began to dissipate. Soon after, the outline of the giant shadow finally appeared. This is that a palace? How could there be a palace here? How could something like that just appear out of thin air? Ha ha ha. I know what this is. It's the Flowing Time Temple. You fools. How could you not recognize the legendary Flowing Time Temple? Flowing Time Temple? What's that? Of the people present, not everyone knew the secrets of the Flowing Time Temple. Some cultivators came from small sects and small families who had never heard of the Flowing Time Temple. Only those who came from great forces that had ancient books passed down from generations ago would know anything about the Flowing Time Temple. Before the disciples of these great forces entered the Four Seasons realm, their elders would definitely have explained some confidential information to them so they could be on the lookout for rare opportunities. Yang Kai even suspected that Xiao Baiyi and Murong Xiao had arrived here deliberately, hoping to find traces of the Flowing Time Temple. Even Wu Chang, Lan Sun, and a few other leaders of the younger generation were present. If they had not known something about this, how could they have gathered here so coincidentally? Whether the palace which had emerged from the golden cloud was really the legendary Flowing Time Temple or not, no one knew, but Yang Kai was fairly certain it was the real deal, because the location marked out on the map Hua Qingxi had given him was in this vicinity. However, Yang Kai had not expected that the Flowing Time Temple was actually hidden in the void and that it would appear in such a shocking way, even drawing in dozens of star seals from all around when it manifested. As a result of this grand entrance, many more rivals would likely appear. As such distracting thoughts flashed across Yang Kai's mind, he suddenly noticed that someone was staring at him and couldn't help turning towards Bian Yuqing and asking, "Are there flowers on my face?" Bian Yuqing coldly snorted and snapped, "You have some information about this Flowing Time Temple, right?" Hearing this, Yang Kai curled his lips up sharply. Bian Yuqing said, "Tell me, you won't lose anything by doing so." "True, I won't lose anything, but why should I tell you?" Yang Kai looked at her with a sneer. Bian Yuqing pouted in dissatisfaction as she argued, "Boy, you think that because you've got a bit stronger. Your wings are now hard. What are you staring at?" As she spoke, she suddenly shot Yang Kai a bad look as she folded her arms across her chest to cover her peaks. "You're not thinking about something inappropriate, right? If you had some propriety, we might be able to talk." Yang Kai glowered at her. Bian Yuqing was angered and looked extremely annoyed. Ko Wu simply smiled, however, and asked, "Junior brother Yang, if it is convenient, can you tell us about this Flowing Time Temple? Protector Bian and I really don't know anything about this." Yang Kai frowned and said, "Since senior brother Ko has asked so politely, I suppose I can tell you about it. However, let me say this first, after I tell you what I know, we no longer owe each other anything, and from now on, we shall be as well water not mixing with river water." "Why are you so wary of us?" Bian Yuqing asked angrily. She could feel that from the moment they met again. Yang Kai was constantly on guard against her and Ko Wu, as if he wished to be as far away from them as possible. "You wouldn't understand even if I explained." Yongkai glanced at her with a solemn expression before continuing. I don't know much about this flowing time temple, only that it was once the secluded home of the flowing time great emperor. You can even say that the Four Seasons realm was formed because of the flowing time great emperor. Flowing time great emperor. Bian Yuqing's face changed dramatically when she heard this name. Judging from her reaction, it was obvious that she had at least heard of this great emperor. Yongkai nodded, organizing his thoughts before continuing. In truth, there was not much he knew either, because even if he knew this was the flowing time temple, he had no way of knowing what was hidden inside. Perhaps there were many wondrous opportunities to be had, but there might also be fatal traps. So it seems, those star seals that disappeared should have fallen into the flowing time temple. Bian Yuqing speculated. Most likely, Yang Kai grinned. Perhaps it was because of the appearance of all the star seals that the temple even showed itself. What junior brother Yang means is that the falling star seals were a separate opportunity. And if it weren't for them, we would never have found the flowing time temple. Ko Wu asked. Yang Kai nodded, his face becoming excited as he said, but this way, this flowing time temple must still have all its original opportunities and benefits left over from the flowing time great emperor. And as for the star seals, I doubt anyone would ignore them, right? As everyone chatted amongst themselves, the golden cloud in the sky had almost disappeared completely and was replaced by a magnificent temple. Even if it was still a fair distance away, everyone could feel a sense of majesty from this temple, like they were staring at a dormant ancient behemoth that was slowly awakening. Finally, at a certain moment, the temple fully manifested and the space around it rumbled violently. Xiao! The sound of something breaking through the air echoed as two figures rushed forward at almost the same time. It was Wu Chang and Luo Yuan, who had both been waiting patiently until this moment. These two had supreme confidence in their own strength, so they didn't hesitate to lead the charge. After they saw these two move, other cultivators naturally wouldn't hold back and everyone began using their movement skills to soar up into the sky. Yang Kai was naturally among these people. Just like what he said, no one knew what opportunities hid inside the flowing time temple, but what was certain was there were dozens of star seals waiting to be acquired, which was enough to drive people crazy. When they were watching from the ground, no one was able to get a sense of just how big this flowing time temple was. But as they approached closer, the majesty of this temple became more and more apparent. Everyone who flew up at full speed still took a full quarter of an hour to arrive before the entrance to the temple. Around the periphery of the temple was a golden barrier of light, while atop what appeared to be the main entrance was a giant plaque with the words, "Flowing Time," emblazoned on it. These two characters had an imposing and mysterious air about them, causing those who stared at them to feel slightly dizzy, as if time was passing quickly before their eyes. After Yang Kai stared dumbfounded for a moment, he quickly retracted his gaze and shook his head. One unfortunate fellow was unable to extricate himself, however. This man was from some unknown sect and possessed a second-order Dao source realm cultivation. He had been fine when he was flying up towards the temple earlier, but now, his gaze had become completely fixed on the two giant characters on the plaque and he seemed unable to turn away. Suddenly, at a speed visibly to the naked eye, this person's black hair turned white and began to flow away with the wind until his head was bald. At the same time, his sturdy body rapidly aged, and in less than 10 breaths, this vibrant man who looked as if he was in his early 30s, had transformed into an old wrinkled man. It was as if in that short period of time, a few thousand years had flashed by for this man. What was most shocking, however, was that this man seemed completely unaware of what was happening to him. Staring at the plaque, this man simply allowed whatever mysterious force it was that was eroding his body and soul to act. He was so lost he even wore a strange, satisfied smile on his face. Shortly after, the vitality of this man expired and he began to fall from the sky. Quite some time later, a thud sounded from below. Everyone's complexion changed drastically after they witnessed this. Learning from this unfortunate man's example, no one dared to stare at the flowing time characters anymore, lest the same fate befall them. There seemed to be a mighty force left behind by a great emperor imbued into these characters, and once a Dao Source Realm cultivator was drawn in by it, they would be helpless to free themselves. Hong hong hong. At that moment, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan, who had set off first, arrived in front of the main hall at the same time, but when they touched the golden halo around the temple, they were blocked from progressing and were unable to enter its interior. The two tried several times, but soon found that no matter what method they used, they could not get around this golden light, so they quickly changed tactics and began attacking it. The pair caused a ruckus as they released a storm of violent attacks against the golden barrier, but to their surprise, their attacks were all reflected back at them, forcing Wu Chang and Luo Yuan to retreat steadily with looks of amazement on their faces. The two of them had even suffered some slight injuries as a result of this unexpected development. Haha! What was the point in running up so fast? Weren't you blocked in the end? Xiao Chun, who had followed immediately after, laughed when he saw this scene. Wu Chang shot an angry look at Xiao Chun and snorted, "If you have the ability, show me how you go in." Xiao Chun smiled slightly and shook his head and said, "Brother Wu Chang was unable to succeed, so how could this Xiao possibly go in? I'm not in the habit of wasting my strength." "Then keep your mouth shut," Wu Chang snapped, unafraid of Xiao Chun in the slightest, despite the latter being an elite disciple from the Southern Territory's overlord, Star Soul Palace. To Wu Chang, there were only two kinds of people in this world: those who were stronger than him and those who were weaker. Masters may be able to win his respect or arouse his fighting spirit, but the weak, he disdained them regardless of their origins. Being slapped across the face by Wu Chang like this, Xiao Chun found himself unable to simply back down and said with a gloomy expression, "You should be thankful that this Xiao has a heavy responsibility this time, otherwise, he would have taken your dog life long ago." The important task he was referring to was naturally to protect Princess Lan Sun. Wu Chang sneered and didn't bother speaking with him again. During these two's brief conversation, many other cultivators had arrived in front of the temple, each one of them staking out a good spot and looking up at the huge and magnificent building before them, a humbling feeling filling their hearts. "Friends, what do you think?" Suddenly, a person stepped out from the crowd and stood before Wu Chang and the others without fear, glanced around, and asked, "How should we go about breaking this golden barrier?" This man had a dignified appearance and a seemingly mild temperament. He looked as if he was about 30 years old and was dressed in black robes, giving him an aura that made him look capable and refined. The energy fluctuations radiating from his body also indicated he was a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. "Kong Chi, you were here too." Xiao Chun looked at this person and narrowed his eyes, apparently recognizing him. The young man named Kong Chi smiled slightly and said, "Why can't I be here? My Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce has a number of entry quotas to the Four Seasons realm. Does it now?" Brother Zhao's question is quite strange. Hearing what he said, Yang Kai immediately understood that this young man named Kong Chi was a rising star of the Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce. Although Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce and Violet Source Chamber of Commerce focused mainly on business, that did not mean these two great forces lacked strength or masters. On the contrary, the heritage of these two giant chambers of commerce was no worse than any other top-level sect. The world simply had a prejudice in its thinking about these two forces, imagining that they were weak compared to sects that focused on cultivation. From what this Kong can see, this should be a powerful barrier spirit array. Is there any friend here who is proficient in spirit arrays who can examine it? Kong Chi suggested. In the face of absolute power, any barrier is nothing. We just need to smash it. A cold snort rang out as Luo Yuan took the initiative. Leaping up into the air, he lifted his arms and summoned a battle axe into his grip. Pouring his source chi madly into his artifact, Luo Yuan condensed the surrounding principles around his blade, causing the ambient world energy to tumble fiercely, releasing a coercion that caused many present to pale. Even someone as strong as Wu Chang wore a slightly solemn expression as he could feel a threat from Luo Yuan's strike. Eight Paths sect really found itself a true monster, Lan Sun commented as a pale blue light flickered around her body, offsetting the pressure from the rolling world energy. Before now, She was still somewhat doubtful a small sect that was barely considered middle class in the Southern Territory could actually cultivate such a talent. Even in Star Soul Palace, such geniuses were rare. No wonder he dared to challenge Wu Chang without flinching. With such amazing strength, he indeed has the capital to act arrogant. In front of everyone's eyes, Luo Yuan's arm holding up his battle axe seemed to swell suddenly, his muscles pulsing with a kind of raw and violent force. Slowly, the glow from his battle axe increased in intensity as the energy fluctuations radiating from it doubled in frequency. This channeling occurred 5 more times, causing the space around Luo Yuan to creak under the terrifying energy fluctuations. Wu Chang and the others who were close to the front even found their footing becoming a bit unstable. As for the cultivators with slightly lower strength, they had been forced to withdraw as their faces paled. Everyone was wondering in their hearts what the result would be if such a blow hit them. Yang Kai's eyes flickered as he too was shocked by Luo Yuan's actions, but he also knew that such an attack could not be performed in real combat because it took far too long to accumulate energy and no enemy would give Luo Yuan so much time to prepare himself. What's more, delivering such an intense attack would no doubt put a heavy load on Luo Yuan and require an immense amount of concentration to execute. Yang Kai understood this, and there were many others present who did as well, such as Wu Chang, Xiao Chun, Xiao Baiyi, and Lan Sun. Ha! Suddenly, Luo Yuan roared and hurled his battle axe, sending it out in a stream of light that had a heaven-destroying and earth-shattering power contained within it towards the golden barrier. At that moment, everyone held their breath and watched quietly. Honk! A brilliant radiance burst forth as the stream of energy impacted the golden barrier, causing it to depress somewhat. But it also showed no signs of breaking. In the next instant, the golden barrier bounced back and reflected the battle axe's attack at an even faster speed than it had been delivered, sending it streaking back Luo Yuan's side and even managing to cut off several strands of his black hair. Luo Yuan reached out and touched his cheek, where a finger-length wound had appeared along with fresh blood. It seems that brute force cannot be used to break this barrier, Kong Qi said lightly. It is reasonable considering this is a barrier created by a peak-level Emperor Realm Master. He did not taunt Luo Yuan in the slightest. Although Luo Yuan's behavior had been reckless, he had also proved with practical actions that this barrier was not breakable through brute force. Princess? Xiao Chun suddenly turned his head to look at Lan Sun and called out inquiringly. Lan Sun shook her head. I haven't seen anything of use yet, so I cannot be certain. Xiao Chun nodded lightly and said, Princess should act with a free hand. Lan Sun didn't reply, her beautiful eyes just staring forward. From her demeanor and posture, it seemed she had some knowledge of spirit arrays and was currently looking for a weakness in this barrier. At that moment, Kong Qi turned and swept his eyes over the crowd. Friends, is there anyone who is proficient in spirit arrays who can come up and examine this barrier? As I'm sure everyone knows by now, this should be the legendary Flowing Time Temple. As long as we can crack this barrier, we shall be able to get inside and explore the wonders of this place while possibly obtaining incredible benefits. If there is someone of high skill here who is capable of assisting us, please do not conceal yourself. Of the more than 30 people present, no one stepped forward to answer this call. The Tao of spirit arrays, like the alchemic Tao, was broad and profound, a profession easy to tread upon, but extremely difficult to master. Everyone present was a Tao source realm cultivator, so each had some knowledge of spirit arrays, but who would have the confidence to crack the barrier arranged by an Emperor Realm Master? Following a brief silence, Kong Qi smiled lightly and turned to a certain individual in the crowd before calling out, Brother Gong, why don't you come and try? Everyone heard this and quickly cast their eyes towards this man just in time to see him put on a depressed look as he glared towards Kong Qi. Surnamed Gong. Could he be? He must be someone from the heavenly River Valley's Gong family. So that's how it is. Ha! It seems there is hope to break this barrier now. Numerous cultivators all began to whisper about this man surnamed Gong. Who is he? Yang Kai asked in a low voice. Why does everyone seem to have such confidence in him? Bian Yuqing smiled at him and quipped, Are you asking me? She assumed the stance of one who had finally caught an opportunity and was clearly planning to blackmail Yang Kai. Do as you please. Yang Kai snorted. Bian Yuqing squinted her eyes before muttering, Little boy, this protector suddenly discovered that you're quite hateful. Humph. That depends on who I'm talking to. Ko Wu punctually interrupted. The Gong family is famous throughout the Southern Territory, not for its strength, but for its proficiency in spirit arrays. No one who comes from the Gong family should be underestimated, especially their old ancestor who is an emperor array master. Regarding spirit arrays, the Gong family old ancestor can stand among the top 3 in the entire Southern Territory. As for this person though, if I remember correctly, he should be the current young master of the Gong family, Gong Wenshan. I understand. Yang Kai nodded. Ko Wu was correct. The one who had been caught by the crowd was young Master Gong Wenshan of the Gong family. Although Gong Wenshan's cultivation wasn't too high, only second-order Dao source realm, when it came to proficiency in the Dao of spirit arrays, everyone present put together would probably be inferior to him. The Gong family had studied spirit arrays for generations. At this moment, Gong Wenshan's face was as wrinkled as a bitter gourd. Stepping forward under everyone's eyes, he muttered to himself, Damn it, I obviously just wanted to explore around and have some fun. So why did I have to encounter such a troublesome matter? If I refuse, it will definitely provoke public anger, and the ones here won't give a shit about my name. Ha! So annoying. Kong Chi, that bastard. One day I'll make him swallow his own shit and then commit suicide. Kong Chi stood to the side, his mouth twitching as he said, Brother Gong, don't you think you should act a bit more prudently? Everyone can hear what you're saying. Gong Wenshan wrinkled his bitter melon face further as he snorted towards Kong Chi. I said it so you could hear it? What of it? Kong Chi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But in this situation, he could only wave his hand and said, Brother Gong, forgive me, but no one else present is proficient in spirit arrays. All our hopes rest with you. Gong Wenshan snorted. You and I have been acquainted for several dozen years, so you should know my temper. Kong Chi nodded repeatedly. Yes, I know you hate troublesome things the most. Cracking the barrier of an emperor is the most troublesome thing in this world. Gong Wenshan's face went so cold one could almost see frost coming off of it. As he walked up to the golden light barrier, he glanced back and forth a few times before turning around and declaring, Good. It's not impossible for me to crack it, but what benefits can I obtain? Benefits? Kong Chi's brow twitched, wondering what other benefits aside from the legendary treasures inside Gong Wenshan wanted. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. How about keeping your life? Is that a big enough benefit? Wu Chang suddenly interjected. Gong Wenshan immediately turned his head and stared at him, a sneer forming on his lips as he asked, Oh? Are you threatening me? Wu Chang snorted. If you break this barrier, you can live. If you refuse or fail, I'll make you die here and now. From his solemn tone, it was clear Wu Chang wasn't just making an idle threat. No one thought he was joking either. After all, it was Wu Chang who was speaking. Interesting. Even when facing Wu Chang, however, Gong Wenshan didn't show the slightest fear. Instead, his eyes just flashing slightly, indicating he was not someone with a weak spine. To the side, Kong Chi was shocked. He and Gong Wenshan had indeed known each other for decades, and they also understood each other's personalities and temperaments. Gong Wenshan was born to only eat soft food and refused to eat hard food. If one negotiated politely with him, everything could be discussed, but using threats was a big taboo. And Gong Wenshan was undoubtedly threatened by Wu Chang just now. Kong Chi seemed to be able to foresee the scene where Gong Wenshan unceremoniously walked off. If Gong Wenshan were to leave like that, no one would be able to crack the barrier around the flowing time temple. Considering all this, Kong Chi didn't care whether he would offend Wu Chang or not, and his expression sank as he shouted, Wu Chang, did you go mad from cultivating too hard? Brother Gong didn't say he wouldn't crack the barrier. So why are you making such indiscriminate remarks? Wu Chang glanced over at him coldly and snorted, Who the hell are you? Why should I care what you think? Kong Chi was angered and shouted, Do you think everyone here is a fool you can bluster in front of? Although he was not as famous as Wu Chang or Xiaxia, Kong Qi was still a rising star who possessed extraordinary aptitude from Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce. So how could he not lose his temper when he was so blatantly despised? And if I do? Wu Chang smiled arrogantly. If you want to be put in my eyes, you need the corresponding strength. Something possessed Xiao Chan at that moment, causing him to insert himself into this argument and further exacerbate it. Brother Wu Chang seems to not put anyone here in his eyes. Heh! As soon as this statement came out, Luo Yuan frowned and silently stretched out his hand, causing his battle axe, which had bounced off by the golden barrier, to fly back to him with a whistling sound. Although Wu Chang was rampant, he was no fool. So when he heard Xiao Chen's malicious comment, which was clearly meant to direct the crowd's anger towards him, he couldn't help sneering at him and shouted, "Brother Xiao, do you have something to say?" "Not at all." Xiao Chen smiled lightly. Brother Wu Chang is already the strongest under the Emperor realm. How could this Xiao dare offer any advice to him? These words were even more provocative than his previous ones, causing even more ire to be directed towards Wu Chang. Even Xiao Bai-yi, who had been standing to the side silently, also began showing some fighting intent. Enough senseless bickering. Don't disturb Brother Gong from cracking the barrier. Lan Sun suddenly shouted. When everyone heard these words, they turned back to find that the root of this whole quarrel, Gong Wenshan, had at some point sat down cross-legged in front of the golden barrier and was continuously sweeping his eyes over it, intently studying the barrier. "Seems you know your limits," Wu Chang coldly snorted, secretly thinking that Gong Wenshan had been frightened by his threat just now. Not only him, everyone present basically thought so as well. After all, Gong Wenshan had just been asking for benefits from everyone in order to break this barrier, but after a few intimidating words from Wu Chang, he had actually obediently sat down and complied. For a moment, many people directed looks of contempt at Gong Wenshan. Despite needing his ability to enter the flowing time temple, that did not prevent everyone from despising him. There was only one person present who had some cold sweat leaking from his forehead as he looked at Gong Wenshan's profile thoughtfully, muttering to himself, "Something's not right. Brother Gong has always had an intractable temper and never gives in to threats. Yet now he's being so cooperative. Just what kind of wicked scheme is he plotting? Ah, now he's even wearing that smile. He must be up to something." The more Kong Qi observed, the more he felt that Gong Wenshan's behavior was odd, and he couldn't help feeling an ominous premonition in his heart. Soon after, Gong Wenshan, who was fixedly observing the barrier, seemed to have gained something and flicked his wrist, taking out an exquisite artifact from his space ring, which was about the size of a palm. There were countless mysterious runes and patterns engraved on this artifact, giving it a mystical air. The Gong family's heaven-disrupting plate? Lan Sun's eyes suddenly brightened as she stared at the plate closely, but soon she showed a disappointed look because what Gong Wenshan had in his hand was obviously not the real heaven-disrupting plate, but an imitation. Gong Wenshan formed a series of seals with his hands as he poured his source qi into the plate, causing some streams of light to shoot out from it and sink into the barrier like fish leaping into a pond. Everyone watched intently, but few could discern anything about what was happening. Xianxia could only speculate that this artifact was some kind of tool that was used to help determine weaknesses in barriers. Things were indeed as Xianxia thought. The Gong family's heaven-disrupting plate was famed for being able to break any spirit array that existed in this world. It supposedly functioned by searching for weaknesses or array nodes which could then be exploited to crack a barrier or array. However, the heaven-disrupting plate was the supreme treasure of the Gong family. So even if Gong Wenshan's status was not low, he was not qualified to carry it with him. The artifact which he took out was a lesser imitation of the heaven-disrupting plate the Gong family had refined, but although there was a big gap between it and the real heaven-disrupting plate, it could still provide great assistance in this situation. More and more streams of light leapt off the plate and sank into the barrier as time passed, and after a while, Gong Wenshan's eyes brightened and he shouted in a low voice, "I found it! Ha ha ha! Seems it was just as I thought." He seemed to be talking to himself about something no one else could understand. As he spoke though, Gong Wenshan stretched out his hand to collect the imitation heaven-disrupting plate. Next, he took out some array tools from his space ring and began flying about, throwing out his tools in a particular arrangement around the barrier. As time passed, Gong Wenshan's expression turned more and more solemn, as if what he was about to do was extremely strenuous and serious. Those formation flags quickly sank into the void and disappeared to no one knew where. Gong Wen continued this process for about a stick of incense worth of time before he came to a stop. After wiping the sweat from his forehead, he turned around and said to the waiting crowd, "Good! Good!" The cultivators looked stunned as they all stared at the golden barrier which still looked perfectly intact, disbelief written all over their faces. Gong Wenshan grinned and said, "I'm finished, so naturally, everything is good." His words were filled with confidence. Having spoken, he clasped his hands together and let out a shout. From the void, countless rays of light burst out and sank into the golden barrier enveloping the flowing time temple, quickly creating a small gap in it. "Open!" Gong Wenshan yelled as he slowly pushed his hands out to the sides, and with his movements, this crack began to expand, like the barrier was really being torn open by his bare hands. "It really is good." At this time, many cultivators were shocked. This barrier had been arranged by the flowing time Great Emperor, so even after countless years, it was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could open. But Gong Wenshan had managed just that. The Gong family's reputation is well-deserved. Even Lan Sun couldn't help but offer her praise. She had to admit that, in terms of the Tao of spirit arrays, Gong Wenshan had vastly surpassed her. Up until now, she had still yet to find a single weakness in the golden barrier, while Gong Wenshan had actually gone so far as to break it open. "Many thanks, Brother Gong. After we return, I will invite you for a drink." Kong Chi laughed loudly before he rushed into the opening first, his figure disappearing in the next instant. He instinctively felt that trouble would soon erupt, and the best thing to do right now was to head in first. With him taking the lead, other people naturally scrambled towards the opening. Wu Chang, Luo Yuan, Xiao Chun, Lan Sun, and even Xiao Bai and Murong Xiao all pushed their source qi in order to protect themselves from being attacked, as well as to guard against any dangers which they might encounter after intruding into the flowing time temple before they too headed to the entrance. As this group of elites rushed to the forefront, others naturally did not dare to compete with them. With Wu Chang's explosive temper, if they accidentally annoyed him, it is possible they would die on the spot. Xiao xiao xiao. The sounds of people breaking through the air sounded as one figure after another disappeared into the opening. However, at that moment, Gong Wenshan glanced at Wu Chang deeply and grinned sarcastically. "What?" Wu Chang frowned as a vague feeling of unpleasantness swept over him. However, he didn't think too much about it as his focus now was entering the flowing time temple to snatch the star seals and whatever opportunities were hidden within. A shocking scene occurred though when he tried to pass through the opening in the golden barrier. Just as Wu Chang approached the entrance, an invisible force struck him from the front and pushed him back several dozen meters. Wu Chang's face changed drastically as he quickly stabilized his figure and turned a gloomy look towards Gong Wenshan. Gong Wenshan just stared back and sneered while pointing his finger and shaking his head. "Everyone else can enter, but you can't." "As I thought." Wu Chang coldly snorted. How could he not understand that this was Gong Wenshan's way of taking revenge? Wu Chang had threatened Gong Wenshan's life just now, but the latter had not reacted too strongly. Now it seemed Gong Wenshan had been plotting this from the start. Could be said that this was the perfect method of getting back at Wu Chang. If everyone was allowed to enter the flowing time temple while only Wu Chang was blocked outside because of his previous threats, how could Wu Chang not be furious? This guy has such a black heart. Yang Kai looked at Gong Wenshan with a happy smile as he secretly approved. Just now, he too had thought that Gong Wenshan agreed to break the barrier because he was afraid of Wu Chang, but now it turns out he was actually hatching this kind of wicked scheme. Even as he thought so, Yang Kai did not slow his pace. After all, it was best to enter the flowing time temple as quickly as possible. As for what happened between Wu Chang and Gong Wenshan after, that had nothing to do with him. "Do you think you can block me?" Wu Chang asked coldly as he looked down at Gong Wenshan. Gong Wenshan smiled and said, "Now that this barrier is completely under my control, only those I allow can enter. Why wouldn't I be able to stop you? Good. Then I'll just kill you." Wu Chang coldly snorted as he held his hands up high, condensing two different kinds of energy onto his palms. One fiery red, one icy white. When these two opposite energies condensed, instead of repelling one another, they surprisingly began to merge together and amplify one another. Forming a giant ball of red and white light, Wu Chang hurled it towards where Gong Wenshan stood. Gong Wenshan remained where he was, not trying to dodge or avoid this attack, simply wearing a light sneer on his face. From this falling ball of light, a terrifying power could be felt, causing Yang Kai and the others who were about to rush into the barrier to hurriedly withdraw, lest they be caught up in this attack by accident. Just as the ball of light was about to swallow him, Gong Wenshan waved his hand lightly, and a golden light suddenly separated from the barrier and enveloped him. In the next instant, a loud explosion rang out as the power of ice and flame filled the air. Flames burst out and ice and snow rolled, but after the dust settled, Gong Wenshan stood unscathed, and the golden barrier surrounding him showed no signs of damage. Glancing up at Wu Chang sarcastically, he sneered, "I already said this barrier is under my complete control. Did you not understand? Idiot!" Wu Chang's face twitched as his expression turned gloomy. After seeing this bizarre scene, the onlooking cultivators who had not yet entered the flowing time temple were all shocked. On the one hand, they admire the courage of Gong Wenshan who dared to offend a monster like Wu Chang. On the other hand, they were shocked by Wu Chang's strength. If the terrifying blow just now had fallen among the crowd, few of them would have survived. When two masters clashed, it was the audience that suffered. Realizing this, everyone present quickly composed themselves and used their best movement skills to charge into the crack in the flowing time temple's barrier. "If I can't enter, none of you can either," Wu Chang shouted angrily, apparently not willing to suffer alone here and swiftly acting to ensure just that. Stretching out his hands, he summoned two Dao Source-grade high-rank swords, one burning red, one icy white. Slashing out, blades of red and white sword chi shot towards the advancing crowd. "Ah! Dodge! Wu Chang's gone crazy. How could he do this?" Everyone was shocked and quickly dispersed. However, Wu Chang had acted without any warning, and coupled with his immense strength, even if his attack had been dispersed across many people, there were still some who were unable to avoid it and were hit by his strange, opposing attribute attack. Honk! A huge pit was opened up in front of the temple as blood and shattered limbs were strewn across the ground. 6 people had been killed directly while another dozen or so were injured. Yang Kai had dodged quickly and emerged unscathed, but Bian Yuqing and Ko Wu had been slightly injured, their faces both showing some shock and fear at this moment. Even as he witnessed all this, Gong Wenshan just stood in place, not using the power of the barrier to protect anyone but himself, nor to stop Wu Chang from attacking. However, after Wu Chang launched his attack, Gong Wenshan actually grinned slightly, as if his conspiracy had succeeded. "Wu Chang, have you gone crazy? We didn't provoke you in any way, so what's the meaning of this?" "That's right, Wu Chang, you were born into a great sect like Heavenly Martial Holy Land, so you should know how to distinguish right from wrong. Just because you cannot go in, do you intend to make trouble for all the rest of us? Wu Chang, don't go too far. If you want to vent your anger, do it on the one who refused to let you in. Don't just attack us out of spite." Among a group of cultivators who had survived the catastrophe, a few people began shouting with dissatisfaction. "Good. The two of you also cannot go in." Gong Wenshan suddenly pointed at 2 cultivators who were clamoring for Wu Chang to direct his rage at the evildoer. The faces of these 2 people suddenly collapsed, turning extremely ugly. "Brother Gong, I didn't mean that. Brother Gong, please be the bigger man and don't care about some misspoken words." "Yes, Brother Gong." No, Uncle Gong. Please let me in." The 2 immediately backed down and begged for mercy. Gong Wenshan simply ignored them. "Brother Wu Chang, The cultivator named Jing Li, who had arrived here first, suddenly cupped his fists and said with a solemn expression, "My benevolent martial sect can be regarded as an attached sect of heavenly martial holy land. So even if others can't enter, I can, right?" Wu Chang did not respond. Jing Li nodded. "Many thanks." As soon as his words fell, he rushed straight towards the flowing time temple. But just as he was about to reach the crack in the barrier, Wu Chang attacked again, sending a blast of sword chi towards Jing Li, nearly slicing his arm off. "Brother Wu Chang, what are your intentions here?" Jing Li sweat profusely as he raised his head up and asked anxiously. Wu Chang simply stood midair and snorted, shouting in a firm, unbending tone towards the crowd. "I said, since I can't enter, none of you can either." As he spoke, he lifted his swords again, crossed them above his head, condensed his source chi, then slashed downwards. A shocking sword light shot out, seemingly leaping across space as it cut towards a figure which was sneakily trying to approach the entrance down below. After releasing this blow, Wu Chang stood calmly and said indifferently, "Anyone who dares ignore my words will die." The moment he uttered these words, though, his expression suddenly changed as a look of amazement filled his face. In front of the entrance below, Yang Kai had to stop in place because Wu Chang's attack was too fast. If he didn't stop, he would definitely be hit. In desperation, Yang Kai could only spin around, form a fist while using his dragon transformation secret technique, as well as his 5 elements indestructible sword chi, and punch out. Hong long long. The cross of red and white sword chi was struck by the dazzling 5-colored punch, causing space to cave in. With the assistance of the recoil from this attack, Yang Kai easily made it to the entrance of the flowing time temple. Before crossing the barrier, he did not forget to call out to Gong Wenshan, "Thanks!" Gong Wenshan stared at the place where Yang Kai disappeared, a strange expression covering his face as he muttered to himself, "That guy, he's strange." He clearly felt that Yang Kai only had a first-order Dao source realm cultivation, but right before everyone's eyes he had taken a blow from Wu Chang head on without any damage. That was not something an ordinary cultivator could accomplish. Wu Chang was also quite shocked. The moment Yang Kai turned around, Wu Chang recognized him as the one who had obtained the diamond-shaped star seal. At that time, he had also used some strange secret technique to resolve the fatal blow he and Luo Yuan had launched against him. That secret technique was so strange and mysterious that Wu Chang was unable to even determine what it was. Now, however, this strange guy actually blocked his own blow head-on. Was that brat playing the pig to eat a tiger? This idea came to Wu Chang's mind involuntarily. At that moment, he became distracted, giving the cultivators down below an opportunity to rush towards the entrance, many of them passing through the barrier and disappearing in the blink of an eye. When Wu Chang came back to his senses and wanted to stop them again, it was already too late. He could only watch everyone rush into the flowing time temple, leaving just him and the 2 other cultivators excluded by Gong Wenshan. "Wu Chang, Wu Chang!" Gong Wenshan laughed, repeating Wu Chang's name, a sarcastic and teasing expression on his face as he quipped, "Now that everyone else has gone in, what are you going to do?" Wu Chang didn't speak as he stared at Gong Wenshan coldly. "Trying to kill me with a glare?" Gong Wenshan grinned. "This is the cost of threatening me. There's nothing wrong with young people being hot-blooded, but if they become too arrogant." As he spoke, he assumed the tone and demeanor of a wizened old sage, but before he could finish what he wanted to say, he saw Wu Chang turn around and fly off, soon disappearing from sight. I didn't even get a chance to add some insults. Well, he's decisive, I'll give him that. If it was me, I wouldn't have been able to give up such a great opportunity so easily. I guess there wasn't any point in sticking around. Gong Wenshan laughed at himself before he turned around and entered the flowing time temple. As he said, it was meaningless for Wu Chang to stay. Gong Wenshan had said he would not let him in and had the ability to back up his words. So instead of staying and being smugly derided by Gong Wenshan, Wu Chang felt it best to leave and search for other opportunities. Of course, a grudge had been formed already, so if the 2 of them were to meet again, Wu Chang would definitely not let Gong Wenshan off so easily. "Uncle Gong, come back! Come back! Brother Gong, don't ignore us. We're still out here." The two cultivators who had been refused entry by Gong when Shan hurriedly shouted, but who was left to give them a response? After waiting for some time outside the temple, the two men could only leave in a depressed manner. What's this? Inside the flowing time temple, as soon as Yangkai got in, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. Here, there was a massive hall that seemed at least a few thousand meters in length and breadth. In front of him, Xiao Chun, Lan Sun, Luo Yuan, Xiao Baiyi, and Murong Xiao Xiao, who had entered first, were surrounded by a group of countless and densely packed puppets. All of them were engaged in a fierce melee, with metal shards and puppet limbs scattered across the ground. Obviously, before Yangkai came in, these people had already destroyed many puppets. Yangkai was naturally quite familiar with puppets, having encountered them a few times back on Shadowed Star. There was also a family on Shadowed Star which specialized in the Tao of puppetry and were able to create almost lifelike puppets. There was no doubt that the star boundary also had puppets, but Yangkai had not encountered any yet. Now, inside the flowing time temple there were too many to count. These puppets were of all different shapes and sizes, but they could be roughly divided into three categories. One was human-shaped puppets, all of which were quite tall and burly and held different kinds of weapons, giving them an imposing air. The second type was beast-shaped, with tigers, leopards, wolves, even snakes and insects. These monster beast-like puppets behaved similarly to real monster beasts and had great lethality to them. As for the third category, they were simply the ones that did not fall into either of the previous two, their images too unique to describe as either man or beast. The number of puppets that belonged to this third category was the smallest, but they also seemed to be the strongest, each one having unique abilities and strengths that were difficult to predict. The number of puppets in this giant hall was quite large, reaching into the hundreds, and all of them gave off an aura equivalent to a Tao Source Realm cultivator. Even though Xiao Chan and the others were favored sons and daughters of heaven, two fists couldn't block four strikes, so when Yangkai came in, he found these people on the defensive with almost no leeway to counterattack. If I knew it would be so troublesome, I would have waited outside a little longer, Yangkai grumbled to himself. He was worried that some of the good opportunities in the flowing time temple would be snatched up by others if he didn't hurry. So he rushed inside, but seeing the scene before him, he realized it would have been better to take his time. It wouldn't be too late for him to enter after all these puppets were killed. Junior brother Yang, be careful. These puppets are not easy to deal with. Murong Xiao Zhao's voice suddenly entered his ear. She should have spotted Yangkai come in and found some time while she was defending herself to warn him. Although I really want to thank you for your consideration, I wish you could have warned me without exposing my existence. Yangkai smiled wryly as, sure enough, the moment Murong Xiao Xiao called out to him, one of the puppets that was near her turned and directed its strange red eyes towards him. This puppet had a strange appearance, looking like a large lizard walking upright, with short forelimbs, extreme long hind limbs, and an inexplicable, hideous atmosphere lingering around its body. As soon as it looked at Yangkai, it immediately opened its big mouth and sprayed out a bright red light. A casual attack has the same strength as a Tao Source Realm strike? These puppets are quite extraordinary. Yangkai felt the intensity of the energy of this ray of light and his expression changed slightly as he immediately dodged. So, the beam of light barely missed Yangkai's body and hit a cultivator who came in right after him. This cultivator was lucky, however, because before he came in, he had worn a defensive artifact armor. His original intention was to prevent Wu Chong from suddenly killing him, but now, this artifact armor had coincidentally saved him from this attack. The cultivator couldn't help stumbling back a few steps as his artifact armor flashed wildly, a moment later calling out in surprise, "What the hell was that?" At that moment, a large number of people rushed in from the entrance, and even Gong Wenshan, who came in last, showed his face. It could be said that among the cultivators who stayed outside the flowing time temple before, apart from the few who were killed by Wu Chong, only 3 were excluded from entering. With more life auras appearing, the puppets that were besieging Xiao Chan and the others in the first group began to disperse to target these new enemies. Xiao Chan and the others were suddenly relieved of some pressure and immediately launched a counterattack, smashing the puppets which had turned their backs on them, causing many to break apart and fall to the ground. Without exception, each of the crushed bodies of these puppets would contain a crystal about the size of a fist that gave off rich energy fluctuations. Spirit energy heart, someone exclaimed as they stared greedily at the crystal. Xianxia's heart was also moved as he instantly realized what this thing was. Spirit energy hearts were the core component of a puppet, and without them, no matter how well-crafted a puppet was, it would simply be a dead object. Only by inserting a spirit energy heart would a puppet be able to operate independently. However, spirit energy hearts were extremely difficult to refine and required the cooperation of an artifact refining grandmaster as well as a puppet master. So their value was extremely high, especially high-grade spirit energy hearts which were almost impossible to find nowadays. There were several hundred puppets in this hall, and each one was at least Dao source grade. In other words, there were hundreds of spirit energy hearts here. If one could bring all these spirit energy hearts out and find a puppet master to refine bodies for them, one could create a Dao source realm grade puppet army. Cultivators such as Xiao Chun, Kong Qi, and Xiao Baiyi, who were born into peak-level forces, may not care too much about the value of these spirit energy hearts, but for those who were born into small sects and families, it was a different story. Smaller forces often found it hard to cultivate Dao source realm masters, but with these spirit energy hearts, they could create a Dao source realm powerhouse. Faced with such a prospect, how could a competition not begin? Even if their own sect couldn't refine a proper puppet body, just selling these spirit energy hearts would net a lot of source crystals. So, after experiencing the initial panic, all the cultivators who rushed in became filled with enthusiasm, summoning their artifacts one after another while attacking the puppets viciously. Even though the number of puppets was massive, and their strength was not too high, with no one to drive and coordinate them, they were unable to use their full strength or take advantage of their numbers, so the tide of battle quickly turned against them. The cultivators who rushed in didn't hold back, the weaker ones forming groups of 3 to 5 to besiege their targets, while those who were confident in their strength fought single-handedly. It was not long before the number of puppets was halved, and the price the attacking cultivators paid was extremely small, only a few people being seriously injured with not a single person dying. Xianxia also took the opportunity to kill a few puppets and harvest some spirit energy hearts which he tossed into his space ring. As time passed, the number of puppets in the hall became less and less, inspiring the cultivators even further, causing the puppets to be cut down even faster than before. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from somewhere in the crowd, catching everyone's attention. Floating mid-air, a star-shaped ray of light flickered slightly before suddenly transforming into a stream of light and sinking into a male cultivator's arm. The cultivator didn't understand what was going on and only felt a burning pain in his arm, causing him to call out in alarm. A 5-pointed star seal. Lan Xun's beautiful eyes lit up and she shouted softly, "These puppets actually have star seals on them?" Xiao Chun swept his eyes across the remaining puppets around him, searching for other star seals. He had already cut down 7 puppets, but such a good deed had not fallen to him yet, making Xiao Chun feel a little uncomfortable. "Ah, this is a star seal." The male cultivator was dumbfounded for a moment after hearing Lan Xun's tender call, but he soon grinned happily and shouted, "I actually obtained a star seal? Ha 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 ha. It looks like heaven is truly taking good care of me." He was overjoyed and laughed. Even if some people around him didn't like his public bragging, they could only envy him. However, after this scene, everyone's interest in killing these puppets increased dramatically, and their attacks intensified once more. In a certain part of the hall, a man and a woman, seemingly fellow sect disciples, were nervously attacking a leopard-shaped puppet. This puppet looked almost indistinguishable from a real leopard and was extremely flexible in its movements, but fortunately, this puppet seemed to only be able to perform melee attacks. So, even if the strength of these two people wasn't very high, they had a good chance of defeating this puppet. It was not the strength of this leopard puppet that made them nervous, however, but rather the triangle mark on its forehead. This mark wasn't eye-catching, but if before now this pair hadn't paid much attention to it, after experiencing the scene just now, how could they not guess it was a star seal? Earlier, several dozen star seals had fallen into the flowing time temple and were likely hidden throughout it now. So it wasn't a surprise that among these hundreds of puppets, a few star seals would appear. This senior brother and junior sister pair weren't from a big sect, nor was their strength too great, so they were worried that if they killed this leopard, the star seal would reveal itself and draw unwanted attention towards them. Although the man who just obtained that 5-pointed star seal was currently ecstatic, there was no doubt he had also become a target who would be attacked as soon as other people had some attention to spare. Thinking so, this senior brother and junior sister pair exchanged a glance and nodded to each other. Instead of immediately defeating their target, they began leading the leopard away into the depths of the temple, trying to escape from everyone's line of sight so they could secretly obtain this star seal. With the chaotic melee occurring in the hall, even if the actions of these two were a bit suspicious, no one would care about them and would likely just assume they weren't strong enough and were being forced back. The strategy these two employed was quite successful, but just as they were about to move far enough from the crowd to not draw attention, a figure suddenly fell from the sky and smashed his fist down fiercely. The hearts of the pair suddenly sank, but it was too late for them to react. A loud thud followed. The leopard-shaped puppet was directly smashed to pieces, and at the same time, the triangle mark on its forehead flew out in a burst of light before falling towards the figure which had just appeared. Just a triangle star seal? The figure glanced at the back of his hand and muttered in seeming dissatisfaction before turning around and attacking another puppet. Seeing this, the woman from the senior brother-junior sister pair bit her red lip and opened her mouth to say something. However, her senior brother's expression changed dramatically as he hurriedly pulled her back and slowly shook his head, explaining in a low voice, "That's Luo Yuan. We can't afford to offend him." "But that star seal..." The woman looked unwilling. The man gave a helpless smile. "Just treat it as if we never saw it. It was obviously ours though." The woman pouted in annoyance. If they had known that Luo Yuan would suddenly rush over to steal their prey, they would have just destroyed the leopard instead of allowing it to fall into another's hands. After the man soothed his junior sister for a while, he somehow managed to persuade her to not find trouble with Luo Yuan. This man understood that there was no point in trying to discuss this matter with Luo Yuan. If one wanted to say something to him, they had to speak with their fists. The battle in the hall lasted for roughly an hour, with several dozen Dao Source Realm cultivators from major sex families in the Southern Territory paying a small price to wipe out these puppets. Without even mentioning the spirit energy hearts, just the 3 star seals which appeared were a massive gain. In addition to the 5-pointed star seal and the triangular star seal Luo Yuan obtained, another diamond-shaped star seal appeared. This last star seal was fortunately obtained by Murong Xiao, causing her to smile happily because now she was qualified to enter the Shattered Star Sea and seek her own path to the Emperor Realm. Only now did everyone have an opportunity to examine the hall itself. This entry hall was massive and at the moment was covered in puppet fragments. However, there was just one obvious passage leading away from it, which seemed to be the only exit. There were no puppets guarding this exit, and no trace of any barriers or spirit arrays protecting it, so it seemed quite safe. Despite that, no one approached this exit carelessly. Everyone first found a place to sit down cross-legged to restore themselves while waiting for someone else to take the lead to explore the way forward. Kong Chi of Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce quietly made his way over to Gong Wenshan and asked with a pleasant expression, "Brother Gong, what do you think of the situation over there?" Gong Wenshan squinted his eyes before turning to him and saying, "Brother Kong, you're even more thick-skinned and shameless than the last time we met, asking me about everything here. How should I know? It's not like I've been to this flowing time temple before." Kong Chi grinned meaningfully and replied, "Those with great capabilities have greater responsibilities. With Brother Gong's knowledge of spirit arrays, if there was any danger there, you would be the first to notice it. Now you're even shamelessly flattering me." Gong Wenshan snorted before he stood up reluctantly, walked over and muttered, "Fine then, I'll take a look." Gong Wenshan muttered as he walked over to the entrance. Kong Chi couldn't help being stunned on the spot. His intention really was to get Gong Wenshan to go up and see if there was some kind of spirit array arranged at the entrance, but he never imagined the other party would agree so readily and without any obvious objections. This was inconsistent with Gong Wenshan's usual personality. Thinking this way, Kong Chi's expression changed slightly and he hurriedly stepped forward, catching up with Gong Wenshan and saying, How could I let Brother Gong take risks alone? This Kong is willing to accompany you as your brother, experiencing joy and sorrow together as one. Are you sure? Gong Wenshan tilted his head and looked at him teasingly. Kong Chi's heart was filled with anxiety, mainly because the other party's expression was too unnerving, making him feel anxious in his heart. He didn't know which answer to give in order to satisfy Gong Wenshan, but in the end, he trusted his gut, grit his teeth, and nodded, yes. Good. Gong Wenshan shrugged and continued to move forward, saying, follow me closely. Hearing this, Kong Chi was overjoyed, knowing that his answer just now was the right one, while on the surface maintaining a calm facade as he said, of course, Brother Gong must also be careful. As the two people spoke, they arrived in front of the only entrance as everyone else watched. By now, the cultivators who were meditating and resting in the main hall had turned their attention to Gong Wenshan's movements and were closely observing, lest they miss some important clue now. Gong Wenshan's ability to crack barriers had been witnessed by everyone earlier, so if there was really a hidden spirit array at this entrance, everyone had faith that Gong Wenshan would find it. For a moment, everyone held their breath, waiting for the results to appear. Gong Wenshan stood at the entrance and carefully observed it for a time, his expression constantly changing, putting everyone else on edge. Only after a long time did he mutter, as I thought, this entrance is just an ordinary entrance, there's no danger here. Saying so, he stepped forward directly towards the entrance. Kong Chi hurried to keep up. The two disappeared from sight the next moment. Playing cheap tricks, Xiao Chun snorted, dissatisfied. Before seeing Gong Wenshan's expression change a few times, he too had thought the former had discovered something, but it turned out to be nothing, making Xiao Chun feel like he had been tricked. Lan Sun smiled slightly and said, Brother Gong is a man who takes great pride in his talents. Speaking of which, did anyone notice that? Xiao Bai suddenly came over to the two of them, looked around for a while and said with a solemn expression, Wu Chang is not here. Xiao Chun frowned. What do you mean? What does it matter to us if he is here or not? Xiao Bai glanced at him briefly before turning his eyes to Lan Sun. What's the meaning of your look just now? Are you disdaining me? Xiao Chun was immediately unhappy. Lan Sun frowned, but thinking of something, she muttered, Brother Xiao Bai means, Wu Chang failed to enter here because of Gong Wenshan's machinations. Xiao Bai nodded seriously. I think so. Gong Wenshan may not have just cracked the barrier around the temple. He might have also taken control of it. Basically, everyone else has come in, but Wu Chang for some reason was excluded. There's only one explanation for this situation. Gong Wenshan didn't let him in. At this point, Xiao Bai let out a depressed sigh as he looked sincerely at Lan Sun and said, Princess, this one is Azure Sun Temple's Xiao Bai, not Brother Xiao Bai. I know who you are. Lan Sun smiled. But you and Xiao Chun have the same surname, so I can't call you Brother Xiao. I heard Yang Kai call you Xiao Bai before, so I just figured calling you Brother Xiao Bai was a good idea. Do you not like that name? I don't. Xiao Bai denied vehemently, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he muttered, After we leave this place, I'll rip that bastard's mouth off. If we delay any longer, everyone else will leave. We need to move. Xiao Chun found it hard to intervene in this conversation, so he could only change the subject forcefully. Lan Sun turned her head and found that most of the cultivators in the hall had already disappeared, with only a few still standing around. Nodding, she agreed, We should go too. Xiao Bai signaled to Morong Xiao Xiao, who nodded in return before the two used their movement skills to rush towards the entrance. Ah, I fell into a trap. Yang Kai couldn't help muttering as soon as he rushed into the entrance, because the world in front of him suddenly distorted and transformed into an empty grassland. This grassland was rich and fertile, with no trace of danger anywhere. In Yang Kai's field of vision, there were blue skies, white clouds, and the green grass as far as the eye could see, which was obviously not a scene from inside the flowing time temple. An illusion array? Yang Kai frowned, stopping in place and not moving. He was not surprised by the scene in front of him because he had a faint premonition something like this would happen before he entered. The reason was naturally due to the first person entering this hall being Gong Wenshan. Judging from his previous methods and style of dealing with Wu Chang, Gong Wenshan was definitely not as approachable and carefree as he seemed on the surface. On the contrary, this guy seemed to be untrustworthy and sinister. After just a few threatening words from Wu Chang, Gong Wenshan had locked him out of the Wu Chang and made him watch as others entered, tormenting him both physically and mentally. Obviously, Gong Wenshan was a man who sought revenge for even the slightest grievance. Kong Chi had asked him to investigate the entrance, and Gong Wenshan readily agreed, causing Yang Kai to have some suspicions. Gong Wenshan was clearly not a noble and selfless character who would do something to solely benefit others. Of course, this was also human nature. And sure enough, this entrance was different from what Gong Wenshan had announced out loud. It had a pleasant surprise waiting for everyone. The only question was whether Gong Wenshan had arranged this illusion array or it was something native to the Flowing Time Temple. If it was the former, it would be easy to handle. In such a short time, even if Gong Wenshan was a spirit array grandmaster, it would be impossible to arrange too profound of an illusion array in such a short time. Perhaps Gong Wenshan had simply set up an array plate to slow down those who followed after him. If that was the case, this illusion array could be destroyed quickly. After all, Gong Wenshan couldn't have exerted too much strength to arrange it. However, if this was a feature of the Flowing Time Temple itself, it would be scary. This was because even Gong Wenshan hadn't noticed any clues before and had walked in confidently. If this illusion array was so subtle that it was even able to deceive someone like Gong Wenshan, how could it possibly be simple? Worst case scenario, this illusion array was so powerful that all who fell into it would be trapped here for a lifetime. Thinking so, Yang Kai took a deep breath, calmed his nerves, and tried to comfort himself. I hope this is just another one of that guy's tricks. Saying so, he slowly closed his eyes before snapping them back open. His left eye had now turned golden and released a solemn, majestic aura that seemed capable of piercing through the void and seeing through all illusions. Yang Kai slowly turned his head and looked around, after a short while breathing a sigh of relief while a look of joy filled his face. Now, he was able to determine that this illusion array was not part of the Flowing Time Temple itself, but just a temporary arrangement made by Gong Wenshan, because under his demon eye of annihilation, Yang Kai was quickly able to see through the weaknesses and distortions in this illusion array. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai decided against breaking the spirit array forcefully and simply walked out along one of its weak points. At the same time, in almost the same illusion, Lan Sun held a light pearl in her hand. This pearl exuded a soft light and was dispelling the illusory scenes around her, allowing her to see her true surroundings as she walked forward. Xiao Qin followed her step by step, coldly snorting as he said, "Why does Princess insist on going through all this trouble? It's just a trivial illusion array. Allow me to break it directly." Lan Sun smiled and said, "One should show proper respect for others' hard work." Gong Wenshan did not hesitate to use an array plate to place an illusion array here just to delay others a little bit. If we were to destroy the spirit array, wouldn't everyone else benefit from our hard work while we gain nothing? I don't plan on doing charity work here. Your Highness, you? Xiao Chun stared at Lan Sun's back in amazement, not having expected that after just a few days in the outside world, this innocent and kind-hearted princess had been contaminated by such wickedness. In his heart, he felt a great deal of pain. On the other side, Xiao Baiyi and Murong Xiao had both closed their eyes, as if they were blind, and were slowly groping their way through the illusion array. The directions they walked seemed random, but in actual fact, they were slowly moving forward. As for how they achieved this, it was unknown. An illusion array? Ridiculous. In the face of absolute power, nothing else matters. Luo Yuan had always adhered to the truth that strength was supreme. So even after falling into this illusion array, he did not flinch and instead pushed his source chi violently to blast his surroundings. However, those attacks, which should have been strong enough to kill an ordinary Dao Source Realm cultivator, did not even cause a ripple when they landed, like stones sinking into a violent sea. Although this illusion array was hurriedly arranged by Gong Wenshan using an array plate, how could it be violently broken so easily? The Gong family was famed for its proficiency in spirit arrays, and Gong Wenshan had already taken into account the combat power of Luo Yuan and the others when he set up this illusion array to ensure that even if they used brute force to crack it, it would still take them some time. The reactions of the other Dao Source Realm cultivators were identical to the top masters after falling into the illusion array. Those who know a little about spirit arrays tried to find array nodes to quickly crack the array. Those who didn't understand spirit arrays used violence. As for those like Yang Kai and Lan Xun, they were able to find weaknesses in this illusion array and easily escape with the help of special abilities. After consuming less than a cup of tea worth of time, Yang Kai had already emerged from the illusion array and the scene before his eyes once again distorted and changed, the blue sky, white clouds, and grass fields suddenly disappearing and being replaced by a dark and deep passage. Yang Kai immediately withdrew his demon eye of annihilation and kicked the ground to rush to the end of this hallway. Arriving at a certain point, Yang Kai's brows couldn't help furrowing as he was forced to stop. There are so many paths? In front of his eyes, there were at least a dozen forks in the hall, each of them too dark to see down and giving off an unsettling aura, as if they were all paths of no return. With so many forks in the road, some would obviously be safe while others would be dangerous, but Yang Kai didn't know how to determine which was which, so he simply chose one at random and dove in. At the same time he disappeared, Lan Xun and Xiao Chun also escaped from the illusion array just in time to see Yang Kai's back disappear. Huh! Lan Xun showed a surprised expression. Someone was faster than me? What? Xiao Chun was a step behind Lan Xun and did not manage to see anything about the situation ahead. It's nothing. Lan Xun shook her head before turning back to see that they were only about 10 paces from the previous entrance. The surrounding area was empty and there was no trace of anyone else. She knew how powerful the illusion array was, but she also didn't need to worry about the others who were trapped inside and simply said to Xiao Chen, "Let's go." Shortly after, the two arrived at the same forked path where Lan Xun deliberately chose a different path from the one Yang Kai entered. Although these passages were somewhat gloomy, they weren't completely dark as luminous stones were fitted into the walls at certain intervals, emitting a soft light. Yang Kai constantly scanned a 20-meter radius around himself with his divine sense, staying on alert for any possible dangers as he explored. Yang Kai hadn't walked far before he suddenly showed a strange look. Perking up his ears, he was able to vaguely hear the sounds of fighting and could even smell a faint bloody aura in the air. Shocked, he quickly retracted his divine sense, concealed his aura, and walked forward slowly. Soon, Yang Kai arrived outside an empty hall that, while incomparable to the main entrance hall he had come from, was still not small. The situation inside this hall was clear at a glance. There wasn't anything strange in it, not except for a pool in the middle of the room which looked a few meters in diameter and depth. Right now, though, this pool was empty. On the left side of the hall, there was a long table with 2 spirit fruits placed atop it. It was impossible to tell how long these spirit fruits had been placed here, but despite it obviously having been a long time, they still looked fresh and even exuded a strong fragrance. These spirit fruits weren't very big, about the size of a fist, and their appearance resembled ripe peaches, causing one to salivate at their mere sight. Those are flowing time fruits. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he immediately recognized what these spirit fruits were. He had previously obtained a jade slip leftover from the wondrous pill Great Emperor's third disciple, Gong Sun Mu, from below Yuan Furnace Mountain. That jade slip had detailed innumerable types of rare spirit grasses and medicines of the star boundary, as well as the methods to store and refine them. Yang Kai had already memorized the contents of the jade slip, so there was no reason for him to not recognize these fruits. So, flowing time fruits are a product of the Flowing Time Temple. At that moment, Yang Kai suddenly understood. Although he knew about flowing time fruits before, Yang Kai hadn't connected them with the Flowing Time Temple. But now, after seeing the flowing time fruits here, he understood. Flowing time fruits had a very peculiar effect that did not do much for a cultivator's cultivation. But even so, that did not decrease their rarity or preciousness. It was recorded in the jade slip left by Gong Sun Mu that flowing time fruits grew in pairs and each one had a diametrically opposite effect. One was able to rejuvenate people, turning an elderly person youthful in a short period of time, while the other was like a time poison that could turn a young man into an old man in the blink of an eye. If one didn't know how to distinguish between the different flowing time fruits, no one would dare to swallow them rashly. Without mentioning whether the second fruit's effect was useful or not, just the first effect was definitely enough to make countless cultivators go crazy over, especially female cultivators. What woman didn't want to remain youthful forever? But no matter how high one's cultivation was, and no matter how astonishing their beauty was, the ruthless carving knife known as time would still leave some marks on them. As time passed, these marks would only grow more and more obvious. But if one had a flowing time fruit that could rejuvenate one's vitality, it was a different story. Even an old woman could regain her lost beauty in the blink of an eye. Of course, that was not to say that the flowing time fruit was only useful for women. For those cultivators who were approaching the limits of their lifespans and had no hope of breaking through, a flowing time fruit was undoubtedly among the best medicines to increase one's lifespan. It could return a cultivator's body to a state dozens, or even hundreds of years prior to when they swallowed it, which was equivalent to adding dozens or hundreds of years to their lifespan. To a certain extent, this was even more precious than an emperor artifact. After Xianxia recognized the flowing time fruit, he immediately became energetic. If this kind of spirit fruit landed in someone else's hands, they wouldn't be able to do much with it, but in Xianxia's hands it could produce amazing effects because he was an alchemist and could use the flowing time fruit as the main ingredient to refine a furnace of flowing time pills. This was an all but extinct spirit pill which could be sold for an immense amount of wealth. Xianxia gulped hard, trying to hold back his drool, as his eyes began focusing on the ruckus at the center of the hall. There, one person and one creature were fighting. They were also the source of the sounds of battle Xianxia had heard before. Impressively, the one who was fighting was Kongqi of Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce. As for his opponent, it was a blood-red monster that seemed like a giant mass of putrid blood. This blood monster had a humanoid upper body, a round head, 2 arms, and a flowing amorphous lower body. As it rushed around the hall, whipping its strange appendages about, it released a thick bloody stench into the air. The light of source qi bloomed from Kongqi's body as he wore a solemn expression. Kongqi was mostly dodging while using sharp attacks to hit the blood monster from time to time, seemingly probing it for weaknesses. Kongqi seemed to be a cautious person that, after encountering a strong enemy, would not make any aggressive moves unless he was certain they would be effective. Before Xianxia arrived, Kongqi had been dealing with this blood monster in a similar way for quite some time. At this moment, he had basically figured out the opponent's routines and methods and was now looking for an opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. How could I have picked the exact same path as this guy? Xianxia hid in the dark and frowned as he mumbled to himself. Just now, there were a dozen or so paths he could have chosen from, but unexpectedly he had picked one someone else had already gone through. But it was also fortunate that Kongqi had advanced ahead of him. Otherwise, Xianxia would be the one dealing with the blood monster at this moment. After scanning the battlefield, Xianxia turned his gaze to the 2 flowing time fruits on the long table again, and a wicked thought came to his mind, one he could not dismiss after having it. While that guy has attracted the attention of the blood monster, secretly taking the flowing time fruit away wouldn't be too much, right? Before now, Xianxia had no dealings with Kongqi, so there was no gratitude or grudge between them. As such, when this idea came up, Xianxia had no qualms about implementing it. Thinking so, he immediately used his nihility secret technique to conceal his aura completely and began to sneak forward cautiously. After nihility was used, Xianxia merged with the void and completely isolated his own aura, to the point where others could not spy on his existence with their divine sense unless it was powerful enough to probe the void. The only weakness of this secret technique was that it only blurred his figure, so others could still see him with their eyes. The hall wasn't too big, and if Xianxia moved too hastily, he would reveal his whereabouts. However, Xianxia had always been a cautious individual, so he only moved swiftly through Kongqi and the blood monster's blind spots. Because there was no need to worry about being detected by their divine senses, Xianxia was able to act unscrupulously as long as he wasn't spotted. In the blink of an eye, Xianxia rushed up to the long table and grabbed towards the 2 flowing time fruits, wanting to stuff them into his space ring. Unexpectedly though, at that moment, a barrier of light appeared around the table when Yang Kai's hand approached it, blocking him from seizing the fruits. Damn it! Yang Kai cursed as he knew that this movement would expose him. And sure enough, when the light curtain flickered, Kong Qi and the blood monster, who were busy fighting one another, both noticed and turned their gazes towards him. Kong Qi stared at Yang Kai with a stunned expression, his eyes bulging as he never expected someone would try to snatch his prize while he was busy dealing with this blood monster. He couldn't help but tease, "Friend, your cultivation may not be high, but your courage definitely is. You're too kind." Yang Kai answered flippantly as he pushed his source chi and punched the light curtain protecting the table. Now that he had been found out, he could just steal the fruits openly. This barrier was quite extraordinary, seeing how it was still functional after countless years. But after taking a punch from Yang Kai, it finally broke. Yang Kai's hands moved quickly as he snatched up the flowing time fruits and threw them directly into his space ring. "You?" Kong Qi became angered, as anyone would in such a situation. After he arrived at this hall, he had found the two flowing time fruits, but before he could obtain them, the strange pool of blood in the hall surged up and condensed into a giant blood monster, forcing him into a battle. Faced with such an enemy, Kong Qi could only focus on defeating it as quickly as possible and then gather his spoils after. Never had he expected that Yang Kai would suddenly appear and snatch what was rightfully his right before his eyes. What? After the flowing time fruit was taken away by Yang Kai, the blood monster, which already seemed like a mass of hostility, roared furiously and rushed over to him, throwing out a huge, bloody fist. This blow? Kong Qi narrowed his eyes as he showed a little amazement. He had been dealing with this blood monster for quite some time now and had thought he had figured out its strength, but now it was apparent it had not been using its full strength. From the attack the blood monster threw at Yang Kai, Kong Qi realized that it was definitely not as easy to deal with as he had originally thought. Turning his eyes back to Yang Kai, Kong Qi sneered and muttered to himself, "A first-order Dao source realm. Will he be killed instantly?" According to Kong Qi's estimates, even if he wanted to defend against this blow, it would not be easy. So wouldn't a trivial first-order Dao source realm cultivator like Yang Kai be pounded into blood mist in the blink of an eye? Honk! A violent bang erupted along with a shockwave of energy from the spot where Yang Kai once stood. Courting death? Kong Qi looked ahead and coldly snorted while at the same time, he carefully searched the chaotic area for the space ring Yang Kai should have left behind after his death. But he was unable to find anything. Could even his space ring have been destroyed? Kong Qi's face went slightly pale, not because of the amazing strength the blood monster displayed, but because Yang Kai's space ring and all its contents had been lost. Regardless of whether Yang Kai originally had anything good in his space ring, just the two unusual spirit fruits from this room were absolutely extraordinary. If Yang Kai's space ring had really exploded due to the blood monster's attack, its contents would have been exiled to the void and lost forever. As Kong Qi became somewhat absent-minded from this shock, the blood monster roared wildly again as a bright red light burst from its body, illuminating the surrounding room. What now? Kong Qi frowned as he hurriedly leapt up in the air to avoid the red light. At the same time, a blood-red light spread across the entire hall, forming a barrier around it that sealed all entrances and exits. The next moment, at one of the exits, the red light curtain caved in slightly as a figure mysteriously appeared, looking like it had bounced off the barrier. It can even do something like this? Yang Kai was shocked as he raised his fist and punched towards the light curtain. Unexpectedly though, despite this light curtain looking quite thin, it was extremely tough, so Yang Kai's fist was only able to leave a dent in it that was rapidly restored. "You?" Kong Qi, who was floating in the air, suddenly gasped, as if he was seeing a ghost, pointing at Yang Kai in surprise and muttering, "Didn't you die?" A first-order Dao source realm cultivator had actually emerged unscathed after taking a blow like that from the strange blood monster, and had even taken advantage of the chaos to flee towards the exit. If it weren't for the blood monster's alertness and its strange method of sealing up the exit, this odd boy might have escaped. At that time, the furious blood monster would naturally vent its anger on Kong Qi. In other words, Yang Kai would have gotten away with all the benefits, leaving Kong Chi to clean up the mess. Insidious little brat, you're too vicious. Are you even human? After Kong Chi understood what had happened, he cursed angrily, wishing he could rush down and join forces with the blood monster to beat Yang Kai to a pulp. Haha. Nice to meet you, Brother Kong. How are you today? Yang Kai greeted Kong Chi slightly awkwardly. He was indeed planning to escape after faking his death, leaving Kong Chi alone to deal with the blood monster. But unfortunately, his plan had been foiled when the exit was blocked. Nice to meet you, my ass. Kong Chi snorted. However, after you die, I think I'll be better. He and Yang Kai had never met before, but Kong Chi's first impression of Yang Kai could not possibly have been worse. Kong Chi felt that Yang Kai was a treacherous and vile snake that should be avoided at all costs, so naturally, he did not give him any face. Yang Kai didn't mind though and simply smiled. Brother Kong need not be so upset. After all, as the saying goes, we rely on our parents at home and our friends when we go out. Who is your friend? Kong Chi interrupted him without waiting for him to finish. Good. Yang Kai's expression turned solemn as his figure flickered to avoid the blood monster's killer blow. Since he secretly took the two flowing time fruits, the blood monster seemed to only care about him now, treating him as if he had killed his father while completely ignoring Kong Chi. The blood monster was powerful, but Yang Kai was proficient in the Tao of space, so it wasn't difficult for Yang Kai to avoid this opponent. But what kept Yang Kai alert was the strange blood chi which was emanating from this monster's body. This blood chi seemed to be highly corrosive and was constantly wearing down his source chi, trying to invade his body and cause trouble. While avoiding the attacks of the blood monster, Yang Kai shouted, Brother Kong, are you not going to come up and help me kill this blood monster? Kong Chi crossed his arms and stared down at him leisurely, sneering as he said, Why should I help you? What does your life or death have to do with me? Brother Kong is slightly mistaken there. Yang Kai shook his head, his words coming out slightly intermittently as he continued to rapidly dodge the blood monster's assault. You understand that this hall has now been sealed up by this creature. Only if this thing dies will we be able to escape. Is Brother Kong willing to be trapped here permanently? Kong Chi smiled and said, I can just wait to kill it after it kills you. Yang Kai snickered in response. I'll be frank then. Brother Kong, although your strength isn't bad, if you want to kill this guy single-handedly, won't it be a bit difficult? Kong Chi's face twitched slightly as, although he didn't want to admit it, what Yang Kai said was correct. Before Yang Kai came here, Kong Chi was still confident he could easily take down this blood monster. But judging from the combat power it was showing at the moment, it was obvious this creature had been hiding its strength before. Even if Kong Chi used his trump cards, he would have to pay a steep price if he wanted to kill this blood monster on his own. What's more, there was no way to tell what other dangers lurked inside this place. So Kong Chi was unwilling to use too much power unless he was forced to. Realizing this, Kong Chi's brow furrowed as he stared at Yang Kai and said deeply, Your Excellency seems to be quite extraordinary. It was only now that he suddenly discovered that Yang Kai was still freely chatting with him while dealing with this blood monster. This was definitely not something a first-order Tao Source Realm cultivator could do. Combined with his previous strange methods, Kong Chi can't help wondering which sect this guy had come from to have such unusual strength. Brother Kong is too polite. This Yang is just a little confident in his movement skill. When Yang Kai spoke, he stopped in midair and waited for the attack of the blood monster to arrive in front of his eyes before disappearing suddenly, as if he was showing off deliberately. Just your movement skill? Kong Chi murmured to himself as he kept his thoughts on the matter hidden, instead shouting, It's not impossible for me to make a move now, but since you took away, you can have one. Yang Kai seemed to know what he was going to say and immediately replied. Just after he finished speaking, something flew out from Yang Kai's hand, causing Kong Chi to frown, reach out, and catch this object, soon discovering that it was one of the spirit fruits which had been placed on the long table before. Just like that, Yang Kai's move made Kong Chi quite confused. Since Brother Kong and I will be joining forces to kill this enemy, dividing the spoils in half is only fair. You don't have any problems now, right? You wouldn't want to monopolize. Yang Kai's voice came out again. Kong Chi carefully checked the spirit fruit in his hand to make sure it was not some kind of fake before solemnly storing it into his space ring and saying indifferently, "Although you are a little unpleasant, since you've shown enough sincerity, this Kong will cooperate with you." Yang Kai grinned. "Brother Kong understands well. Humph, keep it occupied. It will take a while for this Kong to perform this move." Saying so, Kong Chi's source chi flared while at the same time he flipped his wrist and a golden coin appeared on the palm of his hand. With a loud shout, Kong Chi then began to madly pour his source chi into this coin. Seeing this, Yang Kai didn't know what kind of secret technique Kong Chi was going to use, only that it apparently needed to be channeled through this strange golden coin artifact. However, judging from Kong Chi's movements, this move was sure to be extraordinary. So Yang Kai dedicated himself to keeping the blood monster occupied. Kong Chi acting this way was also because of a strong sense of self-confidence. Although he thought Yang Kai was unusual for a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, he didn't believe Yang Kai was stronger than him. Yang Kai being able to deal with the blood monster for so long was probably because of his outstanding movement skill and speed. But if Kong Chi wanted to cause fatal damage to the blood monster, he needed to rely on himself. As such, he assumed the role of attacker. Yang Kai did not disappoint him as expected, leading the blood monster around the hall with ease. On the contrary, as the power fluctuations from Kong Chi grew more intense, it was the blood monster that seemed to feel faintly uneasy and become more irritable. At a certain moment, the blood monster finally gave up chasing Yang Kai and instead turned its odd head towards Kong Chi while revealing a pair of scarlet eyes. Roaring madly, its huge body turned into a blood-red mass of light that shot towards Kong Chi. Kong Chi narrowed his eyes and almost gave up preparing his secret technique to dodge. At the critical moment, though, Yang Kai's figure flashed in front of him and waving his hands, summoned dozens of golden blood threads. The room filled with golden light as the countless golden blood threads wove together to form a giant golden shield. The blood-red light smashed onto the golden blood shield, and its massive body was immediately revealed as it was forced backwards several meters. At the same time, the golden shield unraveled and transformed back into golden blood threads. Yang Kai stretched out his hand to take back his golden blood threads while shouting in a deep voice, "Brother Kong, if you're ready, do it quickly. I can't block a second hit. You're in luck because I'm prepared." Kong Chi smiled before his face grew solemn, and he turned his hand, tossing out the golden coin in front of him while uttering, "Falling golden coins. Shio, shio, shio." The single golden coin floating in front of Kong Chi suddenly split into two, then four, then 8. In the blink of an eye, golden coins filled the air. Every coin danced lightly through the air as they spun rapidly as some grew larger while others shrank down. Under the guidance of Kong Chi's divine sense, these countless coins then flew out towards the blood monster. The blood monster seemed to sense a threat from this attack and hurriedly retreated. But no matter how fast it was, how could it escape from this strange artifact? In the blink of an eye, the blood monster was overtaken by the first golden coin, which on impact began exuding a strange suppressive force, restraining its movements. Immediately afterwards, the second and third coins fell, inserted themselves into the body of the blood monster, and slowed its movement even further. As more and more coins fell, the blood monster was quickly suppressed, and it was not long before its entire body was covered by innumerable golden coins.